The day does not end so much as it collapses. The light, once relentless and golden like the sun's glare, folds downward as though someone has drawn a heavy, sand-colored curtain across the sky. The sun drips behind the mudbrick rooftops and reeds, and suddenly you feel it. Not a coldness, not yet, but a quiet subtraction. The world exhales. The walls stop radiating heat. The air grows still and slightly suspicious, as if it knows the night ahead will be long and full of small, persistent inconveniences. You are already tired. Not the kind of tired that can be solved by sleep, but the kind that seeps into your ankles and lingers behind your eyes, like smoke that refuses to drift away. Your tunic clings to your back with the exact texture of moist linen forgotten in a basket. You have dust in places you cannot politely name, and your nose itches with the dried scent of fish, sweat, and whatever your neighbor cooked or burned for dinner. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, slightly warm from the day's sun, slightly cracked from years of being trodden on by soles and hooves and paws alike. A cat is curled in the far corner of the room, asleep or dead, but either way uninterested in your suffering. Somewhere nearby, a donkey brays with theatrical exhaustion, as if announcing your emotional state to the stars. And above you, the thatch ceiling creaks like a complaint. You should be preparing for bed. That is what this time of day is for, the hour when shadows get long and responsibilities, inconveniently, do not. But your limbs move like you're underwater. You can feel the sand in your joints, even if there is none. The heat has baked your knees into something slightly more ceramic than human. Everything aches, but not urgently enough to earn rest. Just enough to make rest a little bit insulting. You bend over to untie your sandals. The knot resists, smug in its simplicity. When it finally gives, your fingers brush against the raw line it's etched into your skin, and for a moment you imagine being someone else. Someone barefoot, perhaps. Someone who gets to lie on soft things. But the mat in the corner, thin, scratchy, and flat as a broken promise, reminds you that luxury is for priests, scribes, or cats, not for you. Someone outside coughs. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. The kind of cough that belongs to an old man who smokes papyrus leaves and believes that loud noises keep evil spirits away. His hut is 1 wall away from yours, but sound travels through dried mud like gossip. You've heard every argument he's ever had with his wife. You've memorized his snore, his belch, the sound he makes when he thinks no one is listening and scratches something he shouldn't. The light in your room dims further, not because the sun has left entirely, but because your little oil lamp is losing the will to live. You lean forward, strike a spark, and reignite it with the same reverence you reserve for your last bite of barley flatbread. The flame wobbles, sighs, and settles, casting shadows across the rough walls that make them look almost decorative, like someone painted the memory of comfort and left it there to mock you. You lower yourself onto the mat, bones popping in protest. The air smells faintly of onions, sweat, and the kind of damp that clings to corners. If you close your eyes, you can still hear the Nile, distant and patient, shifting like a heavy sleeper in the dark. There is no breeze. The heat lingers, like an unwanted guest, unwilling to leave even though it has overstayed every welcome. Somewhere in the dark, a mosquito prepares its nightly feast, and you, poor fool, are the main course. You scratch without thinking, a dull, slow motion that does nothing but relocate the itch. The mosquito wins, of course. It always does. You imagine it perched smugly on your forearm like a nobleman on a chariot, draining you 1 drop at a time. You slap at the air and miss, disturbing the lamp's flame and triggering a shadow dance on the walls. The room feels smaller now somehow. Not tighter exactly, but more present. Like it's watching you prepare for sleep and withholding judgment only out of politeness. The linen you wear is thin and fraying. It smells of salt and sun, and days spent bending over fields or carrying clay jugs that leak just enough to ruin everything you wear. You fold it with the same respect you'd give a disobedient goat, not out of admiration, but because experience has taught you that disrespect invites chaos. You own very little, and what you do own has opinions. From beneath a bundle of flattened reeds, you pull out your sleep wrap, a cloth blanket in name only. More accurately, it is a scratchy rectangle with aspirations. You shake it once to rid it of whatever beetle may have claimed it since morning, and a small cloud of dust rewards you. There is always dust. It fills your ears, hides in your eyebrows, and collects in the corners of your thoughts. Outside, the street narrows into silence. There are no wheels, no sandals scraping past, only the intermittent thunk of a pot being set down, or a murmur behind thin walls, or a dog too tired to bark properly. The air smells different now, less like heat, more like cooling clay. You think of the potter's kiln in the courtyard 3 houses down, always smoldering, always whispering smoke into the night like a secret. His son sneezes every morning, and you hear it even now in the back of your memory, as if the child's nostrils are echo chambers for your schedule. Lying on your mat, you stare up at the thatch. The ceiling looks soft in the lamp's low glow, but you know better. It's filled with spiders, most likely. At least one lizard. Possibly a snake, if your neighbor's story was even half true. You'd like to believe he made it up, but the man once swore his wife turned into a heron to spy on him, and you're not entirely convinced she didn't. Your arms rest beside you, uncertain of what to do. One of them is asleep. The other feels like it's dreaming. Your back is too aware of the floor. You shift slightly, hoping for comfort, and finding only a pebble. You consider removing it. You do not. The pebble wins. Time doesn't move in here, not in the usual way. It sticks. The night stretches before you like a length of linen drying in the courtyard, too long to handle, too slow to finish. You try to count the reeds in the mat, lose your place, try again. Somewhere past 40, your thoughts blur into shapes, the shape of your father's sandals, worn and mended and worn again, the shape of the moon when it's just a silver hook in the sky, the shape of the clay cup that cracked and kept being used anyway, because everything is cracked and still expected to serve. You hear the clink of a distant bell, probably a herd being brought in too late, or a priest doing something dramatic with incense, or a ghost. Ghosts are a regular part of your evening considerations. Not the dramatic kind, not the type to rattle chains or howl, just the kind who sit, watch, scratch at the door lintel, whisper their opinions on how poorly you've stacked your grain jars. You breathe in. The air has changed again. Cooler now, thinner, the sort of air that slips under your wrap and reminds you how close the desert is, not in miles, but in mood. You can feel the sand watching, waiting. Sand is never gone. It just hides in your hair. Your breath makes no sound now. It floats in and out like water through reed stalks, never in a rush, never entirely sure where it's going. One nostril is half blocked from the day's dust, and your throat carries the memory of dried figs, sweet but sticky in the wrong places. You should have drunk more water, but it's too far now. The jug sits in the corner of the room, just far enough that standing would feel like a betrayal of your body. It's probably warm anyway. You imagine sipping it and feeling older with every swallow, like someone pouring time into their stomach. The mat beneath you creaks as you shift your weight. It's not built for comfort. No part of your day ever is. But the creaking is familiar, a kind of lullaby that only the spine understands. You press your hand flat against the floor and feel the vibration of something living, not loud, not intrusive, just existing. Maybe a mouse, maybe the neighbor's cat, crawling between homes like a soft burglar. Maybe the house itself, sighing under the weight of its years, and your silence. A voice hums through the wall, not directed at you, but not entirely ignoring you either. Someone is talking to a lamp or to themselves. It is the hour of uncertain prayers, the kind whispered more from habit than hope, the kind that sound like complaints if you say them too clearly. Your elbow finds a crack in the mat. Your toe touches the edge of a long-dried beetle shell. You shift again and again until your body accepts the discomfort as a type of bedding. This is the closest it will get to softness, not through pillows or padding, but through the sheer exhaustion of being awake too long. A child cries 2 doors down, not in pain, just confusion. You recognize that cry. You made that cry once. It was your sister who told you it wasn't, though her tone suggested she wouldn't mind if it was. She sleeps nearby now. You can hear her in that special silence shared only by those who live shoulder to shoulder. Her breathing is uneven. She always breathes like she's working through something in her dreams. You're never sure if it's nightmares or just the weight of life pressing down one breath at a time. You close your eyes, but you're still very much awake. The kind of awake that happens when the world is finally quiet enough for your thoughts to start talking. Not loud thoughts, just the ones that wait patiently for their turn. What did that merchant mean by soon? When will the sandstorm come? Did you remember to tie the jars closed? You'll remember the answers in the morning. Or you won't. The jars will tell you. One mosquito finds you, then another. You swat lazily, more out of politeness than fury. You've learned not to take it personally. Everything in this world bites. And then the wind picks up, faint but steady. You don't hear it so much as feel it drift across your eyebrows, carrying the scent of ash and thyme and camel sweat. There's a flap of cloth moving somewhere, or a palm frond stirring, or a forgotten door breathing open. This is the hour of movement without purpose, when things sway for no reason, when even buildings stretch in their sleep. You let your shoulders sink. The mat prickles in return. The blanket itches again. But something in you begins to quiet. Not sleep, not yet. Just that subtle resignation that precedes rest. The body giving up its list of complaints for the night. The mind preparing to file grievances tomorrow. You are not comfortable, but you are still. And that is the nearest thing to peace you'll find. Outside, the world flattens. The sun, already tucked behind the sand dunes, has left a trail of silence that stretches over the village like a worn linen sheet. Thin, fraying at the edges, but still enough to muffle the day. The heat lingers, not as fire, but as memory, clinging to mudbrick walls and the backs of your knees. You press your legs together to pretend you don't feel it, but of course you do. Heat is the one companion that never forgets your name. The night never arrives all at once. It comes in grains, like flour through your fingers, settling in corners, creeping under door frames, hiding in folds of cloth. The oil lamp near your mat flickers, unsure whether to stay lit or not. It smells of burnt sesame and regret. You should have trimmed the wick earlier, but it's too late now, and too far away. Everything useful is always either too late or too far away. That's the rhythm of it. The neighbor's goat makes a sound like an old man clearing his throat. You don't flinch. You're used to the goat. It's part of the evening chorus, along with the slap of sandals on dusty thresholds, the creak of old bones settling into even older mats, and the hiss of a mother reminding her children that quiet is not optional. The goat is the most consistent among them. You suspect it knows more than most priests. The air turns drier, as if the wind has forgotten how to carry water. You breathe through your mouth for a moment, and the taste is like chalk and old sandals. You switch back to your nose and pretend it helps. Your lips feel cracked, even though you licked them 2 minutes ago. Everything here dries out eventually. Your skin, your patience, even your memories. They don't fade, they just get brittle and start to crumble at the corners. You curl one arm under your head and press your cheek into the scratchy weave of the mat. It smells faintly of last week's onions and something older, sweat maybe, or just time. You know this position won't help your shoulder, but the ache is a familiar one, and familiarity is its own kind of comfort. You've learned which parts of pain you can ignore. The wall beside you hums with warmth, not from a fire that went out hours ago, but from bodies pressed too close and breathing in unison. There's a rhythm to the household now, a soft, communal quiet. No one dares speak anymore, not even the night birds. It's the time of secrets that don't need to be told. Your feet brush against the edge of the reed mat, where the straw unravels just enough to poke you when you forget to avoid it. You don't move them. The sting is minor. And if pain means presence, then maybe it's worth holding on to. You think about tomorrow and immediately regret it. Tomorrow means work and heat and words you don't want to say to people you'd rather not see. Tomorrow means trying again at everything, even the things that never listen. So you stop. You let the thought slide away like a fish from your grip. Too slippery, too fast, not worth chasing. There's a shift in the room, a sigh, a rustle, a creak. Not loud, not urgent, just the gentle rearranging of people becoming quiet together. Someone rolls over, someone scratches their scalp, someone mumbles something half-remembered. And all of it makes sense, in the way only nighttime things do. You pull your knees in slightly and let the tension drain from your toes. You are a bundle now, of limbs and linen and low expectations. You are not asleep. Not yet. But sleep is somewhere nearby, pacing in circles, waiting for you to stop noticing it. You close your eyes again, not for the darkness, but for the relief of not having to look at anything else. Your bed is not a bed, of course, not in the way you might wish it to be. There is no bounce, no fluff, no freshly washed scent of anything. What you have is a tightly packed mat of reeds, fraying in places where the fibers have surrendered to years of pressure and sweat. It lies flat on the floor like a polite suggestion of rest. You lower yourself onto it slowly, the way one lowers themselves onto something that might snap or squirm. There's always the soft crunch of something beneath the mat, sand mostly, or worse, something that used to be alive. You shift, then shift again. There is no right position. You find the one that offends your bones the least and hold it like a secret. The day's dust follows you down. It coats your skin like a second, drier skin. The crease behind your knee itches. The crook of your elbow holds a tiny grain that feels 10 times its size. And your back, your poor, noble back, murmurs a dull protest into the reed mat with each breath you take. Somewhere, very near but mercifully out of sight, someone snores. It isn't rhythmic or dignified. It's the kind of snore that gets caught in the throat and dribbles out in little gasps, like a dying flute. You know exactly who it is. You picture their slack jaw and the way their head tilts just so, opening the perfect path for their nasal complaints. You imagine plugging their nose with a fig. You don't do it, but the thought is comforting. The goat is settling too. You can hear the gentle thud of its weight shifting against the tether just outside the door. It sighs. Yes, sighs. In that theatrical way goats do when they feel they have been slighted by the world. You understand the sentiment. You feel slighted too. But unlike the goat, you do not have the luxury of bleating about it. Above, the roof speaks in pops and groans. The reeds are held together by wishes and strips of palm fiber, and every temperature drop stretches something new. A cool thread of air slips through one of the imperfect seams and lands across your neck like the finger of a ghost. You don't flinch. This is normal. Everything in Egypt eventually becomes normal. even this nightly violation by the breeze. Your eyes close slowly, not because you're relaxed, but because your body no longer sees the point in keeping them open. It takes energy to observe, and all the things worth seeing are already hidden in shadow. Sleep does not arrive. Not really. It circles. It observes you like a cautious bird, deciding whether or not to land. You hover somewhere beneath thought, not quite dreaming, but far enough from awareness that your limbs begin to forget their outlines. You do not think about pyramids or anything else. You think about your ankle, which is still sore from the day's work, and the slight dampness near your ribs, where sweat has lingered longer than it should. You think about how your pillow, if one can call a bundled tunic a pillow, smells vaguely like sesame and exactly like defeat. There is always a hope that this night will be better than the last, that some miracle of posture or fatigue will allow you to slip past the usual parade of discomforts. But hope is a slippery thing in Egypt, especially at night. The kind of hope that comes from believing one can truly rest in a world made of stone and sun is often punished with a particularly vengeful cramp. Still, you try. Because that is what people do. You curl slightly to one side and pull the thin cloth over your shoulder, even though it barely covers your knees. You tuck your feet in tightly so the scorpions, theoretical, always theoretical, have fewer entry points. You inhale deeply, the air warm and laced with the scent of old walls, old sweat, and the slow fermentation of everything you own. And then you lie still, listening to the quiet noises of a household not fully asleep. A whisper, a cough, a shifting weight, the distant clatter of a ceramic bowl you forgot to secure. You catalog these sounds like someone taking inventory of a half-sunken ship. You're still afloat, technically, but the water's always rising. Sleep creeps in, not as a comfort, but as a truce. It whispers, gently, not that you are safe, but that you are too tired to care. It is quiet now. Not the kind of silence that means absence, but the kind that hums beneath everything. The slow vibration of heat retreating from the walls, the murmurs of settling bodies, the stretch and exhale of a world trying to tuck itself in. You are not alone, though it often feels like you are. Not in the grand sense, but in the inch-by-inch way your thoughts echo back at you when the oil lamp is out and the ceiling is no longer a shape, but a feeling. You are aware dimly of your own breathing, shallow, slow. One nostril is blocked, as always, for reasons that have never been clear. It makes a soft whistle as you exhale. You'd be embarrassed if anyone noticed, but everyone has their own sound. A cough, a snort, a twitch of feet that scrapes against the matting just enough to be infuriating and familiar. There is a boy 2 mats away who sleeps with his mouth open and dreams out loud. Always halfway into an adventure he never seems to finish. His mother shushes him sometimes, more for herself than for him. The sound doesn't bother you. It reminds you that other minds are still drifting nearby, tangled in their own half-broken imaginings. A comfort, in the way a shared draft or common mosquito might be. A little beetle clicks somewhere near your foot. You hope it's only a beetle. You pull your legs in tighter. The cloth makes a soft, rasping sound as it moves over the coarse hairs on your calves. You adjust your arm beneath your head, trying to coax comfort out of something that has never given it willingly. Your shoulder protests. Your hip scolds you. There are no right angles in your body anymore. Only soft rebellions. Outside, something flutters. Not quite wind, not quite leaf. Just enough to prick your ears and then vanish again into the fabric of the night. You wonder briefly if the goat heard it too. You think yes. She is wise in ways you cannot explain, that goat. She knows when to chew loudly, when to ignore the world, when to turn her back on it completely. You understand her more than you'd like to admit. The darkness shifts, not dramatically, just enough to tell you the moon has moved behind something, or the oil from someone else's lamp has finally surrendered. You do not see it, but you feel it. The slight change in temperature against your cheek, the dull sinking of shadows that have already been low for hours. And still you lie there, eyes closed, body rigid in places and soft in others, thoughts beginning to loosen like threadbare rope. You are not comfortable, but you are used to this. And in that, there is a kind of peace. You think about tomorrow, but only vaguely. The way one thinks of a stone far down the path, visible but not yet real. There will be more dust, more ache, more tasks that feel like they've been passed down from misery itself. But also the same warm bowl of something thick at midday. The same goat, chewing as if she knows the answers. The same sun that rises without asking your permission. This is your life, and it does not apologize for itself. A slow, familiar sound now. Breathing. Not yours. Someone near. A steady rhythm, like a wave that has never seen the sea. It lulls you, finally, across that soft threshold where time loses its grip and sensation becomes suggestion. You do not fall asleep so much as drift sideways into it, like sand sliding down the wall of a worn-out jar, slow and inevitable, with nowhere else to be. And as your grip on the waking world fades, the last thing you notice is the weight of your own hand resting warm across your chest, not as armor, not as burden, but simply there, still, heavy, yours. The sun has left, but the heat has not. It lingers in the walls, in the clay, in the folds of your tunic, like a guest who won't take the hint. Your body sticks to itself with the stubborn glue of dried sweat, and the last breeze vanished hours ago, possibly insulted that no one thanked it properly. Somewhere nearby, someone's goat lets out a sigh, long and disappointed, as if it too expected the evening to be cooler. But the only thing cooler now is the judgment in the air. You lie back and wait for sleep. It does not come. What comes instead is the first fly, then another, then 10 more. They arrive like guests at a wedding no one invited them to, buzzing over your ears with the enthusiasm of children on festival day, dancing on your face with all the grace of unwashed sandals. You swat, you miss. You swat again. The sound is soft, repetitive, part slapping, part surrender. It is a nightly ritual now. Not a battle, because you never win. Not a game, because there's no joy in it. Just a series of increasingly frantic arm movements that make you feel more like a flailing fish than a sleeping human. Beside you, someone stirs. Maybe your cousin. Maybe your cousin's cousin. The bed isn't so much a bed as a mutual agreement to pretend that the mat on the ground offers individual spaces. You can feel the fabric shift, the shared warmth pressing in closer as someone else turns away from the flies, as if such defiance will be rewarded. You envy their optimism. The flies do not care. There is a bundle of palm fronds resting by your side, your weapon, your hope, your evening exercise. You lift it and begin to fan. The motion is slow at first, more ceremonial than effective, like blessing the air in a temple of sweat and disappointment. The breeze it creates is faint, a whisper of relief, a reminder of what could be. But it's enough to make the flies temporarily reconsider your face as a landing site. For now, your arm begins to ache. It always does. The fanning is not a sprint. It is endurance training. Each stroke heavier than the last. Muscles complain. Wrists stiffen. Sleep grows more distant. You wonder if anyone has ever died mid-fan, gently flapping themselves into oblivion. Probably not. But if it were to happen, it would be on a night like this. From across the room, you hear the high-pitched whine of a determined insect as it circles someone else. A slap follows, then a muttered sigh, then silence again. You are not alone in this war, but neither are you helped. The room smells like bodies and onions, like herbs and heat, like old linen and shared fatigue. You can feel the damp air curl around you, sticky and stagnant, as if it too has grown tired of moving. The flies, however, have not. They return, bold and buzzing, crawling across your ankle with the casual confidence of a pharaoh inspecting his kingdom. You reach for the net. It hangs above you like a promise, a gauzy veil that's meant to divide you from the world of winged horrors. You drape it down, tuck it around your mat, pretend it's secure. For 5, maybe 6 minutes, it almost works. You lie there beneath its mesh with a false sense of safety, imagining the life of someone important enough to have a net that actually works. Royalty, probably, or priests, or people who smell less like roasted garlic and despair. But the flies find the hole. They always do. The buzzing returns, muffled now, trapped with you beneath the very thing meant to keep it out. It's worse this way. Closer, more intimate. You are no longer avoiding flies. You are hosting them. You hope they're asleep. You whisper something half-hearted to Thoth, or maybe Bess, whichever one might be willing to smite a few flies on your behalf. No response. Just another soft buzz near your eye. You do not scream. Screaming is for emergencies. This is merely life. There is a moment, brief, traitorous, when you begin to think maybe you could learn to live with it. Maybe you could allow the flies their rituals, their communion with your nose, their explorations of your inner ear. Maybe if you hold perfectly still, they'll grow bored. You've heard that before, from someone who had clearly never met a fly. Still, you try. You lie flat on your back, limbs awkwardly positioned like a badly drawn hieroglyph, breathing as shallowly as possible. A single bead of sweat rolls down your cheek and into your ear. You do not move. You do not blink. You become a monument to stillness. And yet the fly comes. It lands on your eyebrow. It walks the length of your forehead like it's inspecting a new plot of farmland. You count to 5, then 10. And then, with the resignation of a man burying hope, you swat. You miss. This is what passes for excitement. Across the room, someone coughs, a dry little sound like dust giving up. You hear the shuffle of a mat, the creak of papyrus reeds bending under weight, a muttered word from a half-sleeping sibling. You are all in this together, but only in the way fish are together in a basket. Touching, yes. Unified, no. The night outside presses in through the doorframe, thick with the scent of river mud and hot stone. The Nile breathes, and its breath is humid. Somewhere out there, frogs chirp like cracked bells. Somewhere farther, a donkey begins its nightly existential crisis. You stare at the ceiling, which is more of a concept than a structure. Woven reeds and gaps through which stars should shine. But don't. Not tonight. The sky is a wool blanket, dense and stifling, a lid on a pot that's already boiling. The net rustles again. A fly is stuck in it now, just above your mouth, buzzing like an angry prayer wheel. You don't dare move, afraid it will fall. You stare at its tiny legs, silhouetted in the moonlight, and wonder how such a small thing can contain so much arrogance. You turn on your side. The mat crunches beneath you, woven fibers digging into your ribs with the tenderness of forgotten straw. You tuck the palm frond beside your head, like a protective spirit, even though it has never protected anything. Your hair sticks to your temple. Your knees stick to each other. Your will sticks to the idea of sleep, but only barely. Your cousin has stopped fanning. This means it is now your turn. You rise slightly, enough to grasp the fronds and wave them again, slowly, half-heartedly, like a priest who's lost faith but still shows up for the incense. The flies part for a moment, confused, then regroup. They always regroup. You wonder if they pass stories down through generations. You wonder if your nose is legendary. Your arm throbs. Your mind fogs. Somewhere, a cat yowls. You blink and find the ceiling again. The fly in the net is gone. You don't know where it went. That might be worse. You glance at your brother's shape, more outline than presence, snoring into a balled-up tunic. He smells like onions and effort. You used to complain. Now you're grateful. His scent is marginally more repellent than yours, and the flies seem to prefer him. Tonight, anyway. You feel a brief, irrational affection. Then a fly lands on your lip. The affection is gone. You mumble an oath into the linen draped over your mouth, a quiet exhale of defeat that smells like lentils and stale water. The fly, emboldened by your silence, circles once, twice, then disappears somewhere into the folds of night. You don't follow it. You've learned not to hope. Hope is just the thing that keeps you from accepting the itch as part of your face. The mat beneath you offers no comfort. It is made of reeds that were not particularly kind to begin with and have grown more brittle with each sunrise. The threads sag in all the wrong places, and there is a suspicious crunch when you shift your weight, as though something living has surrendered beneath you. You don't check. You've learned not to check. You reposition your limbs with the gracelessness of someone trying to solve a puzzle they are also part of. Left leg bent, right arm flung over your face, one toe wedged against the wall, as if anchoring yourself against sleep's undertow. The fan slips from your fingers. You do not retrieve it. Your shoulder hums with the quiet ache of overuse, and your eyes sting from the salt of sweat and the betrayal of hope. Someone stirs across the room. The rustle is familiar. Your sister. She mutters a word you don't catch, pulls the linen higher, and turns her back to the door. A mosquito whines past her ear, undeterred by her incense or her prayers. You hear the slap of her hand, followed by a sigh of disappointment. It missed. Of course it missed. There is an itch behind your knee. You scratch it. Another appears on your shoulder. You ignore it. The flies are quiet now, or maybe you've gone deaf. Either way, the result is the same. Not peace, but the absence of complaint. The air is thicker now, more syrup than breath. The walls, made of mudbrick and memory, radiate the heat they gathered all day. You are sleeping inside a storage jar, one sealed poorly, with flies. Your mind floats to strange places. You remember a story about a priest who slept on a bed of lotus petals, untouched by insects, cooled by servants with fans of ivory. You remember wondering what it felt like to be that priest. You remember deciding he probably never existed. There's a tickle at your ankle. Not a fly. Something slower, heavier. You lift the edge of your sheet and see it. A beetle the size of a date pit, crawling with the confidence of a guest who knows no one will throw it out. You flick it away. It does not take offense. In the corner, the oil lamp sputters and dies. And now you are in the dark. The darkness does not arrive all at once, but rather seeps in gently, like oil into linen, like regret into memory. First the flicker fades from your eyelids. Then the outline of the doorway vanishes, swallowed by stillness. The corners of the room dissolve, and you are left inside a warm, humming nothing. Not blind, just blank. You hear more now. Sounds that weren't brave enough to compete with the light. The rustle of the roof reeds expanding and settling like old joints. A distant splash. Someone tipping a jar too carelessly near the courtyard basin. The faint clink of a pottery shard shifting under someone's heel, followed by a soft curse swallowed by sleep. A breeze arrives, not enough to cool you, only enough to remind you it exists. It carries with it the faint scent of cooking fires gone cold, ashes and herbs and the memory of someone else's dinner. It curls into your nostrils and clings there, like a guest who wasn't invited but insists on staying until dawn. You shift again, not because it helps, but because it's tradition. One leg out from under the sheet, the other curled close, as if protecting your last drop of comfort. Your back presses against the mat's ridges, as familiar as old bruises. The pillow, carved from wood and ambition, supports only the idea of a head. It's a beautiful object, curved like a crescent moon, but it cradles you like a judgment. A fly returns. Of course it does. It walks across your cheek slowly, like it's considering buying the place. You don't swat it. You've reached that stage of exhaustion where even indignation takes too much energy. You lie there. You let it wander. It will leave when it's bored. From somewhere far off, a dog barks once and then changes its mind. A donkey makes a noise that sounds like the soul of someone who's given up, but still feels obligated to participate. The silence is not broken. It simply takes a different shape. You think of cool stone floors, of shade under temple columns, of sleep that arrives quickly and stays. But those are thoughts for another life. This one is made of sweat and linen and the hum of wings you cannot silence. There's a child breathing unevenly near the door, a grandmother muttering to herself in her sleep, the sound of someone scratching, rhythmic, desperate. You wonder if that someone is you. Eventually, your eyes stop negotiating with the dark. They yield. You are tired enough now that you forget to care. The flies are still there, but they fade to background noise. The fan lies by your side, forgotten and limp. Your fingers twitch near it, but do not close. The night continues, thick and indifferent. And somewhere just beyond your reach, the breeze shifts, just slightly cooler, just slightly kinder. You do not sleep yet, but you begin to drift. Tomorrow you will try again, and tonight the flies will stay, because the flies do not respect bedtime. The flies quiet eventually, not out of courtesy, but boredom. They've tasted everything worth tasting and need to regroup for the next assault. You are left in the aftermath, cheeks sticky from slaps and swipes, your arm pulsing faintly with the memory of endless shooing. The heat, meanwhile, has not left. It has simply rearranged itself. Less like a fire now, more like the stale breath of someone sleeping too close to your face. It clings to you with the intimacy of a regret you never quite outlive. The air inside your room feels like it's been holding its breath since noon. It is thick, unmoving, and personal, like sitting in a bowl of lentil soup that resents your existence. You try to shift gently, so as not to break the illusion of comfort you've spent hours constructing. But the reed mat beneath you has memorized every contour of your bones and reminds you that true rest requires compromise. You lift your head an inch, feel the tacky resistance of sweat-damp linen, and let it fall back again. The sound is soft, but final. The mat accepts your surrender. Somewhere near the threshold, someone has begun the ritual of water splashing. A servant, probably. Possibly your cousin pretending to be helpful. You can hear the rhythmic slosh of water against the clay floor, each splash a small rebellion against the day's leftover heat. The purpose isn't to clean anything. The dirt here is eternal. It's to trick the air into movement. Evaporation, they say, is the poor man's breeze. And right now, you are an eager believer in cheap miracles. You drag a damp strip of linen across your chest. It's not cold. It's just slightly less warm than you are. You drape it over your shoulders, let it cling like a soft accusation. The fabric has been soaked in water and wrung out in hope, and now it sits on you like a disappointed parent, cool for a breath or two, then sticky, heavy, and slightly judgmental. You shift again. The mat creaks. Your skin sighs. The doorway yawns open to the night, though night is generous. It's only darker than before, not truly cool. A breeze flirts at the edge of the room, barely committing. You try to lie directly in its possible path, angling your body like a human sundial, hoping to catch some passing mercy. It doesn't arrive. Or if it does, it forgets to stay. Your body is a beacon for heat and stillness, and both accept the invitation gladly. Someone passes by outside. You hear the scrape of sandals against packed earth, a low hum of a tune older than your bones. The sound comes and goes like a thought you meant to remember. Even in the dark, the village lives, softly, sideways, reluctantly. A dog barks 3 times in the distance, then once more, as if reconsidering. Somewhere closer, a donkey sighs in a manner that feels deeply personal. You peel your tunic up to your ribs, exposing your stomach to the air, or at least to the idea of air. The skin there glistens like oiled pottery, smooth but already regretting its exposure. Beneath your back, the mat traps warmth like an overenthusiastic lover. You shift. Again. The mat whines. You do not apologize. A child cries in another room, then another joins in, either in sympathy or competition. The walls between homes are more concept than structure. You hear a lullaby attempted and abandoned. Eventually, the crying ceases, not because of comfort, but exhaustion. It's a common outcome. You wonder briefly how much water you're allowed to pour on yourself before it becomes a family meeting. You reach for the pitcher anyway, its clay rim cool in your palm. You tip it just enough to dampen another cloth, then drape it over your chest like a soft, wet curse. It helps. For a minute. Maybe 2. Then it's just another layer of discomfort, fermenting slowly in your body heat. The scent of the house has shifted. Earlier, it was dust and oil and something vaguely edible. Now it's sweat, clay, and surrender. You breathe shallowly, not in avoidance, but resignation. It's not worse than usual. It's just familiar, like an old complaint that's become part of your routine. The walls exhale warmth. The floor exhales warmth. Even your own limbs seem to radiate a kind of low, determined heat. You lie still, or try to. Every shift is a negotiation. Your body wants comfort, but the mat wants tribute. You stretch a leg outward. One foot catches a slightly cooler spot, and for a brief, shining second, you believe in happiness. Then the cool becomes warm, then warmer, then indistinguishable. You sigh. The mat absorbs it. A mosquito sings its warning near your ear. You swat at it, wildly, then again, precisely. You miss both times. The sound fades, only to return moments later with renewed enthusiasm. It is a duet now, your pulse and its wings. You consider the net, folded in the corner, dusty from neglect. You imagine setting it up, crawling beneath it, tangling yourself in a cocoon of your own making. You do not move. The effort would make you warmer. Your cousin stirs nearby, muttering something indistinct. You catch a word that might be water, or why, or goat. It's unclear. His mat squeaks, then stills. A gecko scuttles across the ceiling, pausing just above your head. You can't see it, but you know it's there, watching, judging. Your damp cloth has gone warm again. You flip it, pointlessly. The underside is no better. You consider lying on the floor directly, but you've done that before. The coolness lasts 5 seconds. The regret lingers far longer. Another splash of water echoes from the doorway. Slower now. Someone is tiring or giving up. The clay floor glistens in patches, little puddles of attempted relief. You watch one bead of water creep toward your mat. You root for it. It stops. So do you. You adjust the cloth again, now more symbolic than helpful. You imagine a breeze again. Not a strong one, just enough to flutter the edge of the cloth, or your hope. But the air remains a stubborn stillness, as if afraid to move. You wonder what that must feel like, to be the breeze, unsure of your welcome. You would move too, if you thought it mattered. A beetle scratches somewhere behind you. The sound is small, but purposeful. You do not turn. It wins. The moon is doing its best, casting a pale glow through the doorway, painting shadows that don't match anything in the room. You lie very still, as if pretending to be furniture might make you cooler. It doesn't. But pretending is free, and effort is expensive. The wet cloth begins to dry. Not because of any breeze, but sheer willpower. You reach for the pitcher again, half hoping it's empty. It isn't. You dampen the cloth once more and press it to your chest. The sensation startles you, a brief, shocking contrast. Then the warmth returns, like an apology you didn't want. Outside, a breeze stirs at last. You feel it before you hear it, a whisper across your toes, a breath across your shin. It's small. It's fleeting. It is everything. You hold your breath. The breeze lingers for a heartbeat, maybe two. Then it leaves. You miss it instantly. Your cousin snores. Your goat outside shifts in her pen and lets out a soft, unimpressed bleat. Somewhere a pot tips over. A lizard knocks something loose. The world rearranges itself slightly. You remain exactly where you are. Eventually the heat dulls. Not disappears, just softens, loses its edge. You stop trying to be comfortable and begin trying to be asleep. Your body stops fighting and starts forgetting. You no longer care if the cloth is cold. You only care that it stays still. Your eyes blur. The mat beneath you creaks one last time. The moon shifts its angle. The donkey, mercifully, sleeps. And in that soft, breathless space just before dreams arrive, you wonder what's for dinner. The light outside has shifted again, though you didn't see it happen. The sun slips away without ceremony, leaving only the aftertaste of heat. That stubborn warmth still clings to the walls like a film of oil, thick, invisible, and just inconvenient enough to feel like someone else's mistake. You are tired, but not in a way that means rest. You are hungry, but not in a way that means pleasure. It's that ancient sort of hunger, where your stomach no longer asks for variety. It just asks for something to chew. The room around you is dim, not quiet, just dim. The family rustles in their usual places, their shapes barely visible in the flickering light of the oil lamp, which burns with the distinct smell of overuse. You recognize everyone more by their noises than their features. The sigh of your cousin pulling at a date with his teeth, the slight crunch of your uncle's bite, the exaggerated swallow of someone hoping to remind others that they haven't had much. Dinner has begun, or at least the ritual of convincing yourselves that it's dinner. Your own bowl is in your lap, warm but untrustworthy. It's a shallow dish of lentils and weary onions, bobbing in a thin broth that might once have dreamed of being stew. You scoop a bit with the heel of a flatbread, cracked, uneven, crisp in all the wrong places. A single bite offers you the full range of evening textures, the mush of legumes, the sharp bite of a wayward clove, and then, always, the grit. It crunches in your teeth like betrayal, not enough to stop you, just enough to make you reconsider your life choices. Again. You pause, chewing slowly, trying to decide if it's sand, ash, or possibly some remnant of the floor. Then you swallow anyway. There is no second option. You are, after all, not in charge of the Nile's mood or the wind's whims. You live in the land of dust, and the dust lives in you. There's a bowl of dates passed your way, their skins wrinkled like the toes of someone who's bathed too long in a river full of judgment. You take one. It's sweet in a way that sticks to the back of your teeth, as if the sugar has made a home there and refuses to pay rent. You eat slowly, not because you want to savor, but because there's no second helping. Time stretches here, not in luxury, but in limitation. Next comes the garlic. Not given, but floating somewhere in the stew, like an old man who lives on the edge of town. Uninvited, but somehow always present. You find a piece. You chew with polite disappointment. It burns a little, but it's familiar, and familiarity tastes better than hunger. In the corner, someone coughs. No one says anything, but a few heads shift. It's the dry cough, the kind that isn't serious yet, but makes people sleep a little further from you anyway. You pretend not to notice. Everyone pretends not to notice. In this house, privacy is not real, but pretense is sacred. The room smells of food and effort, of sweat layered beneath old oil, of linen that's been worn all day and will be worn all night. The floor is slightly sticky near the basin, where earlier someone spilled something that no one intends to clean. You pull your legs in closer. Your knees pop, quietly. Your joints feel older than your age. That's normal. Age doesn't wait here. It grabs you early and settles into your bones with the persistence of a neighbor who's borrowed your pot and won't return it. You hear your aunt scrape the bottom of her bowl with her bread, the way a miser counts coins. She hums softly, a tune without shape, worn down by years of repetition. Somewhere behind her, the family goat snorts. You don't know how it got in, and frankly, you don't know how it ever gets out. But it does. It's clever like that. Smarter than at least two of your cousins. As the food disappears, the conversation grows quieter. Not because anyone is content, but because the energy to pretend has run out. Hunger is the great equalizer, but exhaustion is the real peacemaker. You stare into your bowl for a long time after it's empty. Not because you expect more to appear, but because you're not ready to move. The warmth of it lingers on your lap, and in that moment, it feels almost luxurious, like a hot stone bath, but without the bath, or the luxury, or the hot. You shift slightly, feeling a piece of reed under your thigh. The mat you sit on is more ambition than furniture, woven from good intentions and structural compromise. It creaks when you adjust. Everything creaks here, even the silence, especially the silence. Someone stands. Someone else belches with the confidence of royalty. A small hand brushes your arm, one of the little cousins, already trying to sneak a leftover crust from your bowl. You let them. The crust isn't edible, but it's theirs now. Ownership is like that here, earned mostly by reaching first. The firelight flickers, dimmer now. The oil is low, or the wick is tired. You lean back against the wall. It's warm, but not comfortingly so. More like it remembered the heat from earlier and hasn't forgiven it yet. You rest your head, feeling the grain of the mudbrick against your scalp, rough and unyielding, like the advice of someone who thinks they know better. A fly lands on your cheek. Of course it does. You don't bother to swat it away. You've done that already, 100 times today, and it's still here. It will still be here tomorrow. Flies are the true pharaohs, ancient, arrogant, and utterly indifferent to your wishes. Somewhere near the doorway, your grandfather clears his throat, a dry, gravelly sound that echoes in your spine. He always does that before sleep, as if to declare the end of his participation in this day. You do not reply. No one does. But the room shifts subtly. A new quietness settles in. Less hunger, more digestion. A soft surrender. You hear someone outside walking past the wall, bare feet on packed earth, the scuff and drag of tired steps. They are humming, or maybe muttering. You cannot tell the difference anymore. Most of the songs here are mutterings with good posture. The dishes clink together faintly, not from cleaning. There is no cleaning tonight, but from being pushed aside without much ceremony. They'll be washed tomorrow, probably by you or someone like you, or someone trying to avoid doing something worse. You stare at the ceiling. It is made of palm trunks and dust. One of the trunks has a crack that looks like a crocodile if you squint. You have squinted at it many times. You've named it. You don't remember what, but it's a name. That's enough. Your stomach gurgles again. Not from hunger this time, but from effort. It's trying its best. You pat it gently, in a sort of apology. Tomorrow will be the same, maybe worse, maybe slightly better if someone manages to trade for fish. But you don't hold hope like that. Hope is expensive. You carry patience instead. It's heavier, but it lasts longer. You close your eyes, just for a second. The fire pops. Someone exhales. A distant donkey brays like it's been insulted by the moon. And there, somewhere beneath the noise, beneath the belly full of lentils and the sand that still lingers in your molars, you feel it. Not peace, not yet, but the possibility of stillness. And before it can settle fully, you remember. There's still the matter of getting undressed. And that, unfortunately, is tomorrow's next mistake. The last of the lentils still lingers on your tongue, earthy, gritty, slightly fermented by the evening heat. You sit motionless, or as motionless as someone can be when the mat beneath them is gently poking upward in all the wrong places. Your belly is warm, full in a way that's more structural than satisfying, like wet clay stuffed into a cracked jar. You haven't moved in a while, and yet your skin itches from everywhere at once, as if the linen tunic clinging to you has developed sentience and holds a personal grudge. The room has dimmed further, not gone dark exactly, but dipped into that muddy golden blur that sits between sunset and surrender. The oil lamp is sputtering now, burning on fumes and familial optimism. Shadows stretch in long, crooked shapes across the walls, some from people, some from the bundles of tools and baskets, and one, distinctly goat-shaped, from a creature that should not be indoors, but has negotiated itself into domestic permanence. You exhale, slowly, not to make a sound, but to test how much effort is required to begin the next part of the evening, the ritual of undressing. It's not glamorous, it's not swift, and it's definitely not optional. Somewhere in the folds of your tunic, sweat has turned to glue. The fabric holds you like a second, more resentful skin, salted by the day, wrinkled by labor, and woven with exactly 4 tiny thorns from this morning's papyrus harvest. You hadn't noticed them before. Now you do. You start at the collar, where the linen has stiffened into a shape that does not resemble your neck, but clings to it like a damp scroll left in the sun. Your fingers are slow, not from fatigue exactly, but from that special kind of resistance that happens when every movement requires peeling your flesh away from something formerly breathable. You pull gently, which is a mistake. Gentle only reminds the tunic that it has the upper hand. So you tug. The fabric gives way with the reluctance of old bread tearing in the middle. There is no elegance, no dignity. You are not undressing. You are disassembling. You lift one arm and feel the sleeve crackle with dried salt, like the ridges of a fish too long out of water. Your shoulder pops. Your elbow complains. You bend and twist in slow, deliberate shapes that resemble ancient religious poses, each one designed to liberate a single part of your anatomy from the linen's grasp. The first sleeve slips off with a sigh that might be yours, or the tunic's, or the floor's. You pause before attempting the second. This one is trickier, molded more firmly to your side from where your sweat decided to hold a symposium beneath your arm. You roll your shoulder, the motion awkward, the sound indecent, half slap, half squish. Eventually, reluctantly, your arm is freed, swinging limply like a papyrus reed after the flood. Now comes the torso, the center of everything. The part of your body most in need of air and most furiously wrapped in linen. You bunch the fabric near your stomach and begin to lift. It peels away in patches, pulling hairs you didn't know you had, and revealing skin that feels foreign to the touch, both overcooked and underexposed, like bread that rose unevenly in a broken oven. Halfway through, the tunic decides it would rather not continue. It catches at your ribs, where a seam, crafted by someone who hated you in advance, has fused slightly to your belt of woven reed. You twist again, one leg up, now off the mat, your balance held only by the laws of stubbornness and one mildly interested foot. You could call for help, but help is busy pretending not to exist. Eventually, the tunic gives up, sliding over your head in a single sticky motion that leaves your hair standing in damp peaks and your ears half folded like poorly stored scrolls. You toss the tunic to the side. It lands with a sound like wet rope, crumpled on the ground like a defeated argument. You breathe. The air touches your skin with no real conviction, just a vague indifference. You are still hot, still sticky, but now less compressed. You scratch at your shoulder absently, then your hip, then the back of your thigh. The scratches leave little trails of satisfaction that last for 4 seconds before the heat reclaims you. Your undergarments are simpler, smaller, but cruel in their own quiet ways. The waistband is twisted. One of the seams is unraveling, and the edge of the linen has curled in on itself like a snake preparing to strike. Removing them requires yet another round of posing, this time while standing, hunched slightly, trying not to brush the low ceiling beams that once deposited a centipede directly into your hair. You wriggle. The waistband rolls. The fabric slides, but only with coaxing, like a stubborn beetle stuck in a jar. By the time you're free, your skin is blotched and red, and you've developed a newfound empathy for fruit being peeled. Nakedness here is not liberating. It is just the state between discomforts. You are exposed, vulnerable, slightly chilled, but still overheated. You glance down at your skin. It bears the imprint of the tunic's weave, a ghostly grid etched into sweat. You are a walking tapestry of heat and habit. Across the room, your cousin is also undressing, not with grace, but with resignation. He grunts softly, then pauses, scratching a spot that suggests the return of whatever parasite plagued him last week. He says nothing, but the glance he throws at his discarded sash speaks volumes. You nod internally. The sash betrayed you too. You sit again. The mat is still lumpy. The breeze you hoped for has not arrived. Your body radiates warmth into the earth like a broken brazier. The undressing is done, but comfort has not arrived. You reach for your night linen, which is to say, your other tunic. The one with fewer holes, slightly less salt, and one peculiar stain shaped like a scarab that refuses to wash out. It's technically cleaner than the one you just removed, if only because it hasn't touched your body in 11 hours. You hold it up. It sags. It has given up. But you slide it over your head anyway, welcoming the limp scratch of it like a pet that never liked you. The linen clings to your knees in places, floats above your chest in others. It doesn't fit. It never did. But it covers you. And that's what counts. As you settle back onto the mat, your body cooling in increments so subtle you doubt their existence, you feel the crust of salt on your shoulder blades crack slightly with the shift. Your hair is damp. Your back is damp. Your everything is damp. You close your eyes for a moment, only to open them again at the familiar tickle of something crawling along your shin. You swat lazily, already knowing it's probably just your imagination. Or not. You'll deal with that tomorrow. The tunic breathes with you now, just slightly. Your skin itches less. Your joints have stopped protesting. The air is still warm, still thick, but it no longer presses quite so hard against your ribs. The hardest part of the evening, the separation of self and garment, is over. You lie back, arms sprawled out, toes twitching toward the edge of the mat. The goat sighs from the doorway, as if witnessing your ordeal has exhausted her too. Your cousin rolls over and mutters something unintelligible about stars or scorpions. Someone's elbow knocks a pot, which wobbles once and settles. The silence creeps in, carrying with it the promise of stillness. You don't trust it, but you'll accept it. And just as your limbs finally settle into their assigned discomforts, you remember tomorrow's bath. Public, awkward, and inevitable. But for now, you breathe, and the darkness thickens around you like oil in cool water. The tunic clings in places it shouldn't. Not like earlier, when it clung with heat and salt and the grudging loyalty of worn linen. But now, with a damp heaviness born of nearby water and unavoidable obligation. You had just started to believe you might skip it tonight, the bath, until your aunt passed by, her eyebrow raised like a ceremonial blade, and muttered something about proper people not sleeping in their own filth, a phrase that lands like a prayer, but feels like a threat. You muttered back, too quiet for anyone to hear, and rose from your mat as if weighted by bricks carved from judgment. The path to the bathing area is short but winding, designed by someone who believed modesty meant making you brush past half your family and 3 baskets of drying herbs. The air has thickened now. The day's heat hasn't gone. It has simply changed shape. It rises from the ground in soft waves, like forgotten breath, clinging to your calves and settling around your neck. Each step makes your soles press into the dirt with a small, reluctant sigh. At the threshold of the washing alcove, you hesitate. Not out of modesty. You gave that up several summers ago when the wind took your loincloth at the riverbank. But because you already know what lies inside: tepid water, shared space, and the echo of too many elbows. The stone basin is wide and shallow, worn smooth by centuries of soap and skin and social obligation. The water inside is cloudy, more opaque suggestion than transparency, and flecked with evidence that at least 3 others have bathed today, and at least one of them shaved something they shouldn't have near the rim. The scent wafts upward, a complex mixture of natron paste, dried herbs, and the vague despair of communal hygiene. You step in with 1 foot. The water is cooler than expected, but not in a refreshing way. More in a "this has been sitting too long" kind of way. It touches your skin like a polite insult, damp, reluctant, with no intention of helping. You lower yourself slowly, knees cracking like ancient hinges. The smooth stone beneath is slick, not quite clean, and definitely colder than the air above. You settle your backside onto it with the resigned squish of someone who knows nothing better is coming. Across from you, a cousin sits with knees pulled up to her chest, scrubbing her arms in circles like she's trying to remove memories. She offers you a natron cake with the tenderness of a bribe. You nod, accept, and begin the process. The paste is made from salt, baking soda, and regret. It's meant to cleanse you. It mostly just exfoliates your soul. You smear it on your arms, your chest, your legs, working it in with the flat of your hand until your skin tingles. Not in a good way, but in that mild burning, am I bleeding or is this normal way? Every stroke pulls away a layer of dust, sweat, and a little self-respect. Someone behind you splashes water too liberally, and a droplet lands on your upper lip. Unwelcome, undefinable. You wipe it off with the back of your hand and try not to think about whose skin it traveled from. The sounds around you are soft but constant. Quiet grunts, rhythmic scrubbing, the occasional squeak of skin on stone, and the distant bleat of a goat who would very much like to be part of this process. You reach for the communal bowl and pour a little water over your shoulder. It slides down in rivulets that dodge the clean places and find the ones you missed. You try again, angling your neck so the water finds its way beneath the tangled strands of hair matted to your back. The sensation is honest, not cold enough to shock, not warm enough to soothe, but present, persistently, unpleasantly present. You try not to make eye contact with the man across the basin, who is engaged in an enthusiastic cleansing of his feet with what appears to be a piece of pottery and zero shame. His toes flex in ways toes shouldn't. The sound they make is damp and philosophical. You avert your gaze, stare instead at the little pile of wet linen he's set beside him, likely his loincloth or a small flag of surrender. The natron dries slightly on your chest, leaving behind a powdery crust that cracks when you shift. You bend forward to rinse it off, scooping water with both hands, letting it fall in broken waves. It takes several tries before you feel confident the grainy residue is mostly gone. Your skin feels raw, but in that deeply ancient way, like a statue that's been sandblasted by 1,000 desert winds and still expected to smile politely. Someone coughs. Someone else enters. The crowd is small but close, and proximity has eroded privacy long ago. You reach for the reed cloth hanging near the entrance, damp and fraying from overuse. You rub at your arms with it, half drying, half scrubbing, mostly smearing the sensation of public dampness into something more tolerable. The last part of the bath is the oil. You do not want the oil. No one really wants the oil. But your mother will ask. And it's considered civilized, which is always code for sticky and expensive. You reach for the small clay pot near the wall, fingers sliding over its smooth rim. The oil smells like flowers and old sandals, a strange, perfumed contradiction that clings to your nostrils like gossip. You dab a little onto your palms, then your chest, then reluctantly, your arms, your legs. It doesn't spread, it drags. You massage it into your shoulders, wondering if you've just sealed in the dirt instead of removing it. But tradition doesn't wait for results. You finish anointing yourself, aware now of every shift in your limbs. The oil magnifies every movement, makes you feel like you've been dipped in something ceremonial and sticky. The cousin beside you sneezes into her elbow, flicks a beetle off her knee, and rises with the grace of someone who bathes often enough to be disillusioned. She doesn't speak, but her absence leaves more space than her presence ever took. You sit for a moment longer, letting the humidity soften your fingers until they wrinkle like half-dried figs. The water around you laps gently against your sides, reminding you of its shared nature, its recycled purpose, and its unwilling intimacy. Eventually, you rise. Your skin peels off the stone with a sound that suggests it wasn't quite ready to part ways. You step out, feet slipping slightly, toes splaying for balance. You reach for your wrap cloth, damp, stiff, familiar, and drape it around your waist. It clings briefly, then settles. Everything settles. The body, the mind, the subtle regret of bathing in a bowl the size of ambition, but filled with the promise of disappointment. You exit the alcove just as another cousin enters. You nod. He nods. Nothing is said. Everything is understood. The air outside has shifted again. It is not cooler, but it smells less like people. You breathe it in like it might undo the bath's more memorable moments. Your skin prickles slightly where the oil meets the breeze. You walk slowly back to the mat, not because you're tired, but because walking quickly makes the oil squish in uncomfortable places. You resist the urge to scratch. By the time you reach your corner of the shared sleeping space, someone has moved your bundle of linen. The goat has not moved. She looks at you like you've interrupted her. You nudge her gently. She grunts but gives way. You settle once more, your skin slick, your limbs heavy, your thoughts vaguely cleaner than they were. Not pure, but less dusty. The fire in the corner has dimmed. The night is stretching out, yawning, settling its elbows in every crevice of the house. You shift again, trying to find the dry side of the mat. There is no dry side, but there is a less wet one, and you take it. And just as your eyes begin to close, you remember the next ritual, the oil, the scents, the regrets still clinging to your collarbones. But that is another chapter, one that will arrive just after this moment fades. You have dried, mostly, or at least you've stopped dripping. The bath, if one insists on calling it that, is over. You emerged slightly cleaner, slightly more exfoliated, and vastly more aware of every sore muscle you own. The clay basin is now someone else's problem. You left it clouded with skin cells and a faint layer of existential fatigue. And now, you are a blank canvas, or so you're told. A body newly prepared to receive the sacred oils and sacred scents and sacred consequences of what comes next. You sit, shoulders still steaming slightly, on the cool edge of a brick ledge that was not built for comfort, leaning forward like a haggard statue while someone nearby begins the ritual. It's not entirely clear whether this ritual is meant for physical well-being, spiritual alignment, or simply the illusion of having done something productive with your body before collapsing into sleep. Either way, it begins with a stoppered jar being pried open, the scent leaking into the air with the slow menace of an invading army. You know the smell even before it hits you. It is both floral and aggressive, like someone crushed a field of lilies under a chariot and bottled the aftermath. The oil is warm from the sun and thick, with the color of melted honey that's been left in the shade too long. You flinch as it touches your skin, not because it burns, but because it slides. The first drop lands on the back of your neck and trickles downward, indifferent to your posture, pooling like guilt at the base of your spine. You make a small noise in protest, a sound halfway between a sigh and a grunt. But there is no mercy here. The scent deepens. The rubbing begins. The hands applying the oil belong to someone you vaguely know, but not well enough to complain to. Their palms are sandpaper wrapped in warmth, and their technique is enthusiastic in the way that suggests a grudge. They knead your shoulders like overworked dough, pushing oil into skin with circular devotion. Supposedly, this is good for the spirit. Supposedly, it wards off curses, dryness, and admirers. Mostly, it just makes you shine like a fruit stall display after closing time. You try to relax into the motion. You try to believe the ancient wisdom that oil softens not just the flesh, but the mood. But the scent is relentless. Rose petals boiled in persistence, mingled with something woody and faintly funereal. The air becomes heavy with it, as if you're inside a jar yourself now, preserved for later examination. You can feel your pores protesting. Your arms are sticky. Your thighs squeak slightly when they shift. You try not to think about it. There are stories about oils being sacred, about the priests who bless them and the pharaohs who receive them. Your version is less glamorous. You sit under a reed roof, the light from a dying oil lamp flickering across your oiled knees, and you think mostly about how many bugs this will attract. The fly from earlier, the one who insulted your eye, returns with reinforcements. They hover near your shins now, confused but interested. You swat without conviction. You are too lubricated to be taken seriously. Another dab of oil is massaged into your scalp, and your hair, which already resembles a well-used broom, flattens into submission. It smells like crushed myrrh and effort. You wonder how long it will take to undo all of this in the morning, when the scent has soured slightly, and your pillow, or what passes for one, has become a relic of questionable hygiene. For now, though, you endure it. You are supposed to feel grateful, blessed, protected, divine. Instead, you feel like a salad. The final application goes to your feet. There is no escaping this. You brace yourself as cool fingers spread oil across your arches and toes, which are more bone than flesh at this point. Your heels crack audibly under the pressure. Somewhere in the distance, a goat bleats disapprovingly. You are unsure if it's about the scent or simply the general condition of your feet. Either way, the goat is correct. You shuffle slightly on the brick, trying to redistribute the oil that is pooling in the dips and valleys of your skin. The back of your neck feels like it belongs to someone else. Your forearms glisten like sun-baked pottery. You try not to think about how much sand is still clinging to the spaces behind your knees, or how the oil has formed an alliance with every loose particle of the day. You are slick, scented, and slowly sinking into a state of mild regret. The ritual ends not with a flourish, but with the quiet corking of the jar and a grunt that might be approval or dismissal. You nod, because that's what you do, and stand up gingerly, trying not to slide out of your own skin in the process. You are technically clean. You are ceremonially prepared. You are radiating floral hostility. And when you are finally rubbed, scraped, and anointed to satisfaction, or perhaps just resignation, you sit quietly, still vaguely damp, and smelling like someone else's idea of virtue. The oils have done little to cool you, but they've left behind a shine that might confuse the moon. You shift beneath your tunic, the linen clinging in all the wrong places. There's nothing left to do now but figure out what counts as bedtime clothing in a world where sleepwear hasn't been invented yet. And so, with your skin slippery and your patience thin, You begin the delicate nightly ritual of choosing which slightly cleaner rag to pretend is a robe. Even when glistening with oil and humility, there comes a moment when you must decide what not to wear to bed. This is less a choice and more a ritual of elimination, subtracting everything too stiff, too stained, too recent, or too likely to make you itch in ways you're too tired to itch back. The body may be prepared, oiled into submission and lightly simmering under the floral sheen of ancient customs, but the matter of cloth, of linen, woven and worn, is far from settled. The trunk creaks. It always does, the lid stubborn like an old neighbor who doesn't open the door until they've told you 3 stories you didn't ask to hear. Inside is a compromise disguised as a wardrobe. There is no separate section labeled nightwear. That concept belongs to the future, a luxury of eras where people dress specifically to be horizontal. Here, horizontal is merely a condition of exhaustion, and clothes are whatever hasn't disintegrated yet. Your hand hovers over a tunic that once belonged to your cousin, or maybe still technically does. It's softer than most things you've worn this week, and has that telltale looseness that only comes from too many washings in too little water. The hem is frayed, the armpits carry a history of previous users, and there is a spot on the lower left that might be old stew, or blood, or fig. You do not investigate further. It smells only mildly of the day. You decide it will do. The act of undressing is more symbolic than effective. After all, the daytime linen you wore is not dramatically different from the one you're about to slide into. Just slightly less committed to public appearances. The difference lies in how it droops, how it gives up before you do. You remove the outer layer of your dignity and slip into something that offers no judgment. It's limp. It's forgiving. It's fashioned through exhaustion. The tunic settles on your shoulders like a sigh. The oils on your skin protest briefly, making the fabric cling and then release in slow, sticky reluctance. You adjust the neck hole with the practiced awkwardness of someone who has done this too many times in too little light. It's too wide on one side, too tight on the other, but you accept its asymmetry like you accept everything else, with the resignation of a person who no longer remembers what comfort is supposed to feel like. There is something distinctly uninspiring about bedtime clothing when it is indistinguishable from the tunic you wore while hauling bricks or bartering for onions. The only difference is that this one hasn't been outside today, at least not recently. There might still be a grain or two of sand from when your sibling used it to mop up something unmentionable by the cooking fire, but that's practically ceremonial by now. Every garment has stories. You just prefer not to know them. You sit down on the edge of your mat, the linen brushing against your thighs like a hesitant stranger. The material has lost its ambition. Once, perhaps, it was proud. Now it is a cloth-shaped ghost of effort, hanging from your shoulders with the energy of a defeated flag. Still, you're grateful. It is, after all, less filthy than the rest. And at this hour, in this state of half-oiled surrender, less filthy passes as clean. Around you, the room shifts. Someone else is doing the same. Your sibling, you think, judging by the way the corner of the shared mat groans under a familiar weight. The sound of fabric rustling in the dark is one of the more intimate melodies of life here. It speaks of compromise, of ritual, of private negotiations with public linen. You hear a brief, frustrated huff. Someone else has chosen poorly. Maybe they picked the tunic that looks fine in daylight, but at night turns into an itchy, heat-trapping net of regret. You lie back carefully, letting the linen settle around you like a tent that's lost its poles. There is no pillow, of course. That honor goes to a curved slab of stone you'll meet shortly. But for now, your shoulder blades rediscover the woven mat beneath. The tunic slides up slightly, revealing your knees to the humid night. You make no move to fix it. You are not here for elegance. The neck hole begins to feel tighter now. Perhaps your body has swollen with fatigue, Or perhaps the fabric simply chooses this moment to remember it resents you. You tug gently. It gives an inch, maybe less, before resettling like an insult that insists on repeating itself. A beetle clacks somewhere nearby. The sound of its hard little feet against clay is disproportionately loud in the quiet. You close your eyes, but the tunic tickles your neck, and you suddenly become aware of how the seams rub against your underarms, abrasions waiting to happen, like distant arguments that will bloom into blisters by morning. The scent of the tunic has changed too, now that your body is heating up again, not from exertion, but from the sheer metabolic embarrassment of trying to rest. It begins to emit the aroma of the person who wore it last, someone whose diet included more onions than yours, and possibly more time in the sun. You wonder vaguely if this counts as sharing, if they know you are wearing their sweat back to life. There's a comfort, strangely, in the familiarity of it. The fabric doesn't judge your posture, or your thoughts, or the way your knees keep knocking against each other in the heat. It holds you the way a weary goat might, begrudgingly, with a faint smell and no affection, but also no expectation. Outside, a breeze considers entering the room and then doesn't. The air stands still. You shift under the weight of your garment, trying to find the cool side of the tunic, only to discover there is no such thing. Linen is honest like that. It holds heat and complaints equally well. Someone on the other side of the room sighs. You hear the faint slap of a palm meeting a mosquito. The sound echoes your own memory of last night's bites, which even now pulse with the muted pride of wounds earned during unconscious battle. You scratch under the hem, not because it itches, but because it might. You're preemptively uncomfortable, just in case. The linen responds by folding itself deeper into your skin, like a reprimand. You apologize silently and lie still again. The night stretches. You shift your knee. The tunic tightens at the hip and bunches near the thigh. A wrinkle forms under your back, and you try to flatten it with your elbow, only to create two more. You begin to understand the futility of your ancestors' architectural pursuits. It is not that they lacked tools. It is that fabric, like stone, does not yield to desire alone. Eventually, you stop moving. Not because you have found peace, but because movement no longer seems to improve anything. The tunic has become your shell, your shroud, your reluctant companion in the slow approach to sleep. You breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, tasting the oil on your upper lip and the cloth on your tongue. A child murmurs in their sleep nearby. The rustling resumes, then fades. You imagine your sibling's tunic has betrayed them in a similar way. Somewhere across the room, someone mutters a curse at a wrinkle. It is oddly soothing. You pull your tunic down one last time, half hoping it will finally drape correctly, like a well-trained curtain. It does not. But it doesn't right up either. That, in itself, feels like a win. You accept this minor truce between body and cloth. The heat wraps around you. The linen joins it. You are now swaddled in a compromise between dignity and surrender, a relic of a long day folded into itself. You do not look good. You do not feel clean. But you are at least covered. Covered in a tunic that smells like yesterday, fits like disappointment, and clings like guilt. But it is yours, at least for tonight, until someone else claims it tomorrow, after you've discarded it once more into the communal churn of maybe laundry, maybe not. And with that, your eyes drift toward the curved shadow of your stone headrest, waiting patiently like a carved question mark. You breathe in. You breathe out. The tunic, such as it is, holds its shape. Tomorrow, it might become someone's daywear again. But for now, it is your nightwear, which, in this place and this heat, is just a less ambitious version of the same thing. And as the cloth sighs around your knees and the silence deepens, you hear a soft buzzing rise in the dark. the sound of persistence with wings and no bedtime. The tunic has surrendered. Not in a grand, noble sense, but more like a flag that's been dragged through too many shared laundry basins and now only half remembers its purpose. It clings in places it shouldn't, billows in places you didn't expect, and settles with the sulking stillness of something that knows it's not helping, but refuses to leave. Still, it's on, and that's the final wardrobe decision of the evening. What follows now is the gentle collapse into something that pretends to be rest. Your bed. The word bed should carry hope, softness, refuge. But here it arrives with splinters, sagging ropes, and a deep woven skepticism. You approach it slowly, not out of reverence, but because your foot stepped on something questionable in the dark. And now you're limping with a kind of quiet dignity that doesn't want to wake the cousin already half asleep on the far mat. Their breathing is irregular, not in a medical way, but in the pattern of someone who's already begun snoring between dreams of goats and overly salted stew. Your bed is a frame, more or less. Wood shaped into a rectangle that doesn't match the lines of your body, strung with ropes that remember every night of your existence, and a woven surface of reeds that have long since given up the illusion of comfort. It makes noises when you look at it, more when you touch it, and when you finally ease yourself down onto it, gingerly, like a person trying not to spill soup on their knees, it responds with a creak that sounds vaguely judgmental. There is no mattress, not in the sense you'd like to imagine. Just a mat, woven, reeds mostly, stiff with age and experience. It smells like the past and feels like the inside of a broken basket. Each strand presses into your skin with stubborn memory. They don't mold to you. They don't welcome you. They merely endure your presence like a cat that has been sat on. And you, in turn, endure them. You always have. You shift slightly, hoping for a better angle, a more forgiving arrangement of limbs. But the mat beneath you interprets this as a personal attack. A new ridge forms beneath your shoulder blade, another beneath your left thigh. It is the kind of surface that teaches your body geography, hillocks of pain, valleys of discomfort, and fault lines where the weaving has frayed into cruel little whiskers that scratch with academic precision. Beside you, someone coughs in their sleep. A short, dry reminder that the air you all breathe is communal and slightly gritty. You wonder if the mat beneath them is any better. You wonder briefly if you should have claimed that corner near the door earlier, when the goat vacated it. But that spot is cooler, yes, and possibly less noisy, but also dangerously close to where things enter the room. Bugs, breezes, neighbors, the occasional lizard with boundary issues. So you stay here, adjusting your limbs once again with the optimism of someone who has not yet given up on the possibility of sleep. Your elbow finds a smoother patch. Your hip agrees, if only momentarily. But now, your left foot dangles just past the edge of the frame, brushing against the wall, where the mud plaster is cool and crumbly. You pull it back in slowly, hoping not to wake the entire room with the sound of dust crumbling off architecture. Then comes the pillow, or rather, the headrest, a carved curve of stone, designed by someone who believed necks were meant to be disciplined, not supported. You lower your skull toward it cautiously, like approaching a wild animal. The stone is not cold, but cool in a way that feels clinical. It fits beneath the nape of your neck with the warmth and generosity of a disapproving tutor. You adjust. Again. The curvature doesn't match the shape of your skull. You wonder if your head has changed, or if the stone simply never cared to accommodate you. There's a spot just behind your right ear where the stone doesn't quite meet skin. That small gap becomes a canyon of discomfort over time. You stuff a folded scrap of linen into it, which helps until it shifts and becomes a wrinkle pressing into your temple like a slowly advancing accusation. You lie still, accepting this new arrangement as punishment for a sin you haven't committed yet. Your back, meanwhile, is reacquainting itself with the mat's geometry. Each rib seems to find its own personal nemesis in the weave. You try lying slightly diagonally, one knee bent, one arm overhead. This helps until your fingers brush the elbow of someone already asleep beside you. They grunt. You retreat, folding your arms over your chest like a pharaoh preparing for eternity, except with more itch and less ceremony. There is a splinter in the frame, near your ankle. It doesn't pierce the skin, but it threatens to. Like a dog baring its teeth, but not quite biting. You curl your toes to pull your foot away, sacrificing alignment in favor of self-preservation. In doing so, your shoulder slides off the mat slightly, rediscovering the cold stone beneath the frame. You wonder if anyone, in all of history, has ever truly been comfortable here. Above you, the ceiling is dark and uneven, the beams lost in shadow. You can hear the occasional flutter of wings, a bat probably, or maybe something worse. You do not look. Instead, you focus on your breathing. Slow, in, outside. You try not to think about the mat. You try not to feel it. But every breath makes your chest rise and fall, and each movement redistributes pressure across the reeds, which poke back with renewed curiosity. The tunic has shifted again. It bunches beneath your shoulder, the seam pressing into your clavicle with quiet determination. You slide a hand underneath and try to flatten it, but all you manage is to create a new wrinkle across your stomach. It's fine. It's not fine. You pretend it's fine. At some point, your skin begins to stick to the mat, not in a dramatic, sweaty way, but in the slow, humid adhesion of warm flesh on woven straw. Every slight movement now carries resistance. The mat does not wish to let you go. You become one with it, not in a spiritual sense, but in a logistical one. A mosquito passes near your ear, humming a single note of threat. You flinch. The mat takes your flinch as a challenge and retaliates by shifting under your spine. You feel every individual reed as it presses against your vertebrae, like someone trying to count them one by one. The pillow, still stone, still disapproving, has numbed the back of your head. You consider turning onto your side, but you know from experience that the curve of the headrest was not built for lateral thought. You try anyway. The stone digs into your temple. You reverse course, but now your neck has decided it preferred the discomfort of side sleeping and punishes your indecision with a twinge that radiates into your jaw. Someone snores nearby. It is a low, wet sound, rhythmic in the way a leak is rhythmic, predictable and entirely unhelpful. The mat vibrates slightly with each snore. You wonder if it's sympathy or resentment. The scent of old oil, dust, and bodies clings to everything. Your bed smells like a room that has been slept in for generations, because it has. There is no such thing as fresh linens here. Only new layers of memory woven into the reeds, each strand saturated with the unspoken truths of 100 tired limbs. You shift again, slowly, carefully. A splinter finds your calf. You curse internally, in the kind of language that involves no words, just raw emotion and an ache behind the eyes. You settle again. You let the pain fade. It doesn't, but you pretend it does. Eventually, your breathing evens. The mat no longer fights you, or maybe it does, but you are too tired to notice. The itch on your thigh remains, but the energy to scratch it has drifted somewhere unreachable. You lie there, half wrapped in linen, half embedded in woven misery, fully aware that rest is not a destination, but a negotiation. And somehow, despite the mat, despite the stone pillow, despite the echoes of snoring and the promise of mosquito bites, and the certainty of waking with a new bruise in the shape of something suspiciously reed-like, you begin to drift. The mat shifts once more beneath you, but you no longer respond. You have entered that soft, blurry territory between endurance and sleep. Your body aches, your skin protests, But your mind lets go, because even a slab woven from itch and ancestral disappointment eventually becomes familiar. And in that familiarity, however flawed, there is finally stillness, just in time for the buzzing to begin again. The bed does not love you. That was clear long before you began the negotiation of your limbs into some acceptable position upon its woven surface. But now, as stillness settles over the room like a particularly scratchy linen sheet, you discover that there are worse things than uncomfortable bedding, things with wings and agendas. It begins with a hum, not a musical hum or even a human one, but the kind of needle-thin whine that begins just beyond the range of rational thought, a sound that seems to be inside your ear canal before it reaches the air. It arrives without warning, without mercy, and always, always, just after you finally exhaled the kind of breath that thinks it might become sleep. The mosquito has returned. Not a mosquito, no. The mosquito. The one that knows you better than your siblings. The one who has mapped the geography of your body, your warmest spots, your itchiest reactions, the precise moment your blood is most delicious. You've never seen it. Not really. A blur at best, a ghost most nights. But it knows you. And tonight, it is feeling confident. Your eyes open. Not fully, just enough to let in the grainy dark and accept, with the sort of bitter wisdom only sleep-deprived peasants possess, that this is the beginning of another skirmish. You try not to move. Movement invites interest. Movement sends signals. And worst of all, movement unearths the one fold of fabric you had managed to keep over your ankle. You feel it before you hear it this time. That microscopic dip in the air pressure near your cheek, like a breath you didn't take brushing past your skin. You flinch. Just a twitch. But it's enough. The mat creaks beneath your ribs. The mosquito vanishes, or seems to. It could still be there, hovering near your ear with the kind of malice only creatures that dine on you can muster. You lie still again, tense, listening. Someone nearby exhales deeply. Probably your cousin, the one who insists he never gets bitten. He doesn't. You've watched. The mosquitoes hover right past him and go straight for you, like you've been marinated in something floral and vaguely edible, which, to be fair, might be true. That perfumed oil your mother made you smear behind your ears was supposed to be soothing. Instead, it's just aromatic bait. The stone headrest is no longer a concern. Your neck has gone numb in its curve. What occupies you now is the awareness of your skin, and how much of it is technically available. Your arms, exposed up to the elbow. Your toes, peeking from beneath the hem. Your neck, your cheeks, your forehead. All of it suddenly feels like it's being read by invisible eyes. You shift slightly. The mat grumbles. A reed catches your tunic and scratches your thigh with a sound so minor it feels like an accusation. You adjust again, this time to pull the edge of your tunic over your toes. The fabric doesn't reach. It never does. You tug anyway. Now your shoulder is exposed. You are engaged in a futile ballet of half-coverings and cold drafts. There's the sound again. Closer this time. A thin, rising note that warbles through the silence with the confidence of a creature who knows exactly where to land. You slap. Too hard. Too fast. And your own palm meets your cheek with a slap loud enough to wake your mother, who doesn't stir, but whose snoring pauses just long enough to make you worry. You remain still, heart thudding in your ears, cheek stinging from your own betrayal. The mosquito is gone. Or perhaps laughing. It's hard to say. The silence returns. But now it's heavy, too full, too waiting. You know it will come again. And it does. The moment you allow your breath to soften. The moment you start to forget. This time it lands. You feel it. The weightless weight of a living pinprick descending upon your collarbone. It's not pain, yet, but the sensation of being chosen, of being seen, of being slowly pierced by a hunger too tiny to understand, but too persistent to ignore. You jerk upright. The mosquito vanishes. Your neck protests. The mat complains. Someone mutters from across the room. You lie back down in shame. You itch. Of course you do. Your arm, your knee, your earlobe. You scratch one, then another, then wonder if you've invented the itching or earned it. Your skin becomes a map of phantoms, each itch a mystery without evidence. You drag your fingernails lightly over your calf. Satisfying, yes, but now you've displaced the linen again. Your ankle is out, and the mosquito knows it. It always knows it. You think, briefly, of the little clay bowl with smoldering herbs your neighbor swears keeps bugs away. You remember how it smelled like burned onions and regret. You remember the one time you tried it and ended up coughing yourself to sleep next to a cousin who muttered that it smelled like funeral soup. You never used it again. But now, in the hush of this miserable, buzz-ridden hour, you would burn your own sandals if you thought it might help. The mat beneath you has absorbed your shifting like a grudge. It sags in places you never expected and rises in places that seem personal. Your head slips slightly on the headrest, and now your jaw is pressed forward in a way that makes your teeth touch wrong. The stone is unforgiving, but at least the mosquito can't land on your ear if it's pressed into granite. Probably. You cover your face with your arm. That helps, for a moment, until your elbow begins to sweat into your cheek, and you remember that breathing beneath your own armpit is not, strictly speaking, restful. You adjust. Again. There's no good answer. Just a menu of bad choices. Somewhere outside, a donkey brays. Loud, echoing, existential. You feel a kinship with that donkey. You too are caught in a cycle of discomfort and confusion, making strange noises in the night because you don't know what else to do. Another buzz. Closer. You fling the blanket, if it can be called that, more a strip of limp cloth, over your entire head. The air immediately becomes warmer, closer, thick with the smell of your own evening skin. But the sound is gone. You hold your breath, trying to listen past the damp fabric. Nothing. Maybe it worked. Maybe the mosquito has moved on. You dare to breathe again. A mistake. The cloth shifts slightly. The mosquito finds the gap. It zips past your eye like a whisper that hates you. You emerge, flailing gently, trying not to wake your entire extended family by inventing a new martial art against tiny airborne adversaries. You slap your own thigh. A soft whack in the dark. No confirmation of success. But the buzzing stops. For now. Your ear itches, then your knuckle, then the inside of your knee. You are becoming a constellation of complaints, your body speckled with invisible offenses. You lie back again, defeated but upright in spirit. You've accepted that this is the night's occupation. Not sleep, but battle. Not rest, but endurance. Somewhere in the house a child whimpers. A parent shifts. A goat scratches itself against the outer wall with the enthusiasm of a creature who fears no buzzing consequence. You envy the goat, its fur, its indifference, its probable immunity. You wonder if you could make a mosquito net out of goat hair. You do not have the energy to pursue the idea, but you file it away under unlikely but desperate. Your own breathing slows, not out of peace but exhaustion. You no longer react to the itches, the noises, the occasional brush of wings. You are becoming part of the mat, a breathing fixture, a lumpy arrangement of linen, skin, and mild resentment. The mosquito returns, of course. You hear it again. Just once. A brief pass near your eyebrow. But you do not flinch this time. You are past that. You are too tired to fight. Let it have what it came for. Let it drink and go. You hope it tells its friends you taste terrible. And somehow, through the hums, the itches, the silent rage, you begin to drift. Not asleep exactly, but drifting. Your thoughts are a slow crawl, your breath shallow, your body too tired to care where the linen lies. The mosquito hums again, fainter now, Or maybe you've moved beyond it. Either way, it begins to sound like a lullaby, or something close enough. You scratch once without opening your eyes. You exhale, and then you lie still, just in time for the gecko above the door to stir. But that's tomorrow's problem. The mosquito hum fades like a threat unfulfilled, replaced by a silence that isn't really silence. It's the kind that breathes in the cracks, expands with the dark, and makes room for everything else that lives here with you. You lie motionless, not from peace, but because movement feels like an invitation to be noticed by things that skitter, crawl, or flap. And there are many things, too many perhaps, all of them either more awake than you or much less concerned with your personal space. The woven mat groans faintly beneath your shoulder as you shift, not because you want to, but because something small and pointed just brushed your ankle. It could have been a loose reed, or the corner of your tunic, or one of the 1,000-legged roommates that treat your floor like a public road. You resist the urge to look. Looking would confirm, and confirming would lead to choices, and choices require energy. Instead, you try to convince your brain that whatever it was has scuttled off elsewhere, perhaps to investigate your cousin's foot. That seems fair. The family cat is curled in the corner like a judgmental loaf. She has taken the best spot near the wall, where the coolness gathers and the moonlight spills in just enough to make her fur look clean. It isn't. It never is. But she carries herself with the superiority of a deity, the kind that accepts worship in the form of leftovers and the occasional neck scratch. She lifts her head, very slowly, and stares directly at you. Not affectionately, not even curiously, just stares as if to say, "I am aware of your discomfort and I approve." Then she blinks once and resumes being mysterious. The gecko above the doorway hasn't moved in hours. Or perhaps it has, and you didn't notice. It clings to the wall like an accusation made flesh, its small belly pressed flat against the plaster, tail twitching occasionally as if dreaming of meals yet to be ambushed. It chirps, a single sharp click, somewhere between a hiccup and a threat. You hear it often now. You've learned not to flinch. Much. From the other side of the room comes a snort. Human this time. Likely your uncle. His snores are like sandals dragged through wet grain, uneven, but determined. He sleeps flat on his back, arms askew, mouth open just wide enough to invite insects and bad luck. You envy his commitment. He could sleep through a sandstorm, probably has. You, however, lie awake cataloging the wildlife. Something rustles near the storage basket. It's a quiet rustle, one that knows it shouldn't be happening. Mice are small, but the sound they make when they believe themselves alone is impressive. You imagine the mouse with tiny scrolls and lists, checking off which grain sacks to nibble and which ones to leave for later. It's probably wearing a smug little face and chewing loudly for fun. You hope the cat notices. She won't. The walls creak again. The plaster contracts with the night's cooling breath, and each crack feels like it's thinking. That's the problem with old houses. They aren't haunted. They're just too full of memory. Every corner stores the size of generations. Every niche remembers your father's complaints, your grandmother's arguments, your own whispered regrets. The room knows everything. And worse, it lets everything stay. The breeze through the doorway carries with it a fluttering shape. Moth, probably, or something even less charming. It thuds softly against the wall, once, twice, then decides to explore elsewhere. You watch its shadow dance across the ceiling like a ghost who's forgotten its choreography. It settles eventually, somewhere near the rafters. You tell yourself it's staying there. At your feet, something shifts beneath the mat. A puff of air, perhaps, or a change in weight. You freeze again. There's no point in identifying it. The floor belongs to everyone, and you are just another body in the crowd. You tuck your toes closer to your knees and feel the comforting roughness of the linen wrap tighten around you. Protection, illusionary and insufficient, but something, nonetheless. You glance at your sister, curled nearby like a misplaced scroll. She mutters in her sleep, some fragment of dream escaping like steam from under a lid. Her hand twitches, then her foot, then her breathing slows again, drawn out and peaceful in that infuriating way only true sleep can be. You consider her blanket. She's hogging it, as usual. In the distance, a beetle clicks across the floor. You don't see it, you feel it. That tiny drumbeat of purpose as it moves, single-minded and unaware of your opinions. It's heading somewhere, probably under your mat, or into the basket of folded linens that were almost clean. You try not to imagine it laying eggs. You fail. The ceiling above is a tapestry of lines, shadows, and dust. You watch it for a while. It does not change, but you swear it twitches. Once, twice. Something is up there. A spider? A lizard? You pull the blanket slightly over your chest, not because it will help, but because you'd like to believe you tried. The smell of the room is thick now, oil and dust and feet, and a faint sweetness from the leftover bread someone forgot to cover. It sits in a bowl near the head of the room, slowly becoming a home for every creature that appreciates starch and neglect. You were supposed to eat it. No one wanted to. It will be gone by morning, thanks to the creatures that live where the broom doesn't reach. The donkey outside snorts again. The neighbor's, not yours. It speaks into the dark like a bored philosopher, loud, nasal, unapologetic. It reminds you that walls are more suggestion than boundary. Sound travels. So do smells. So do animals. You once found a toad under the bed. Still not sure how it got there, or why it was so angry. You roll to your side. The mat protests again, but you find a sliver of relief in the shift. A slightly cooler patch of reed. A more forgiving angle for your hip. You settle almost. And then, of course, the goat sneezes. It's faint, but it's real. From just beyond the window slit, where the livestock pens lean into the back wall like drunk uncles, you hear the distinctive wheeze snort of a goat disapproving of the breeze. You wonder if it's the same one who chewed your sandals last week. You hope not. You still haven't forgiven it. The room breathes. Everyone in it. Everything in it. You hear it now. Dozens of small inhales and exhales. People, animals, bugs. It's a shared rhythm, imperfect and overlapping. You are a note in that melody, not the soloist, just part of the hum. Your cousin turns over. The floor creaks. The cat shifts. A gecko chirps again, louder this time. Maybe it caught something, or maybe it's just reminding you that the walls have eyes and feet and very little respect for privacy. You don't feel entirely awake anymore, but not entirely asleep either. You float somewhere in between, cradled by the noise and nonsense of a house that refuses to shut down. A living room, in every sense. You scratch your arm, slowly. The itch was real, or imagined. It doesn't matter. The scratching helps. You exhale. The breeze tickles your neck. A strand of hair sticks to your cheek. You don't move it. The floor creaks again. This time, maybe from the wind. Maybe not. Something thumps softly in the corner. The bread bowl, perhaps. Or the beetle, now victorious. And you lie still. Not because you are at peace, but because movement would require explanation. And there is no explaining the quiet throb of a shared room that never entirely sleeps. Just breathe. Just small sounds. Just things that move because they are alive and the night is long. You close your eyes. The gecko clicks. The cat sighs. And somewhere behind you, the snoring starts again. The gecko clicks once more, then settles into a silence that feels planned. Somewhere near your feet, the cat exhales in that slow, dramatic way that only a creature without responsibilities can. You do not move. You do not speak. And still, the room seems to fill with a sound that feels louder than speech, thicker than thought, and more persistent than time. It's the snoring, the endless, undignified ensemble snoring of your extended family. It begins with your uncle, as it always does, his contribution unmistakable. A long, wavering inhale, followed by a sputtering exhale that sounds like a reed flute being stepped on. He lies on his back, jaw slack, arms crossed as though preparing for burial, and breathes like someone arguing with their own lungs. You've tried to find a rhythm in it. You've tried to make it musical. You've failed. But just as your brain starts to dull from the repetition, another layer joins the orchestra. Your younger brother, sleeping face down with one arm over his head, as if protecting himself from dreams. His snoring is nasal in the way mud is wet, absolute and unapologetic. A strained hum through a stuffed nose, rising in pitch until it sounds like a mosquito flying loops around your skull. And then, silence. Blessed silence, followed by a wet snort, like a goat discovering something it doesn't like. Your cousin, next to you, breathes like he's forgotten how lungs work. His snores come in sharp, abrupt bursts, as if he's been holding his breath for far too long, and then remembers, violently, to inhale. It's not rhythmic. It's not predictable. It's like someone practicing drowning in slow motion. You lie perfectly still, your head pressed to the reed mat, trying not to breathe too deeply yourself, in case your exhale disrupts the very delicate and somehow deafening balance of this nocturnal symphony. The mat creaks beneath you, and immediately your aunt coughs in her sleep, a dry, papyrus-crackled cough that ends with a murmur and a roll of her shoulder. She's the lightest sleeper among you, and yet the loudest when asleep. A paradox wrapped in linen and sore joints. The air smells like shared breath now, and feet, and the faint sour residue of the evening meal that no one wanted to clean up. It hangs over the room like a tired cloud, thick and unmoving. Every snore seems to stir it slightly, like ripples across still water. Your father, thankfully, does not snore. He breathes like he's afraid someone might hear him doing it. But your mother, well, her contribution is different. She hums. Not songs, not on purpose. It's a sort of soft warble in the back of her throat, like a lullaby sung by someone who's never heard music. It rises and falls in long arcs, too gentle to be annoying, too persistent to ignore. You once thought it comforting. That was before you knew it never stops. And then there's the baby. The baby doesn't snore. The baby does something worse. It sleeps perfectly quietly for an hour or two. And just when your body begins to surrender to its own exhaustion, when your brain begins to fog and your eyelids finally stick together, the baby lets out a single loud, indignant bleat, like a goat, a very small, very unhappy goat. And then, nothing, just silence again, as if daring you to relax. You begin to suspect that all of this is intentional, that the family has somehow arranged itself into a schedule, like laborers building a pyramid of noise. They snore in shifts, so the room is never silent, and you are never fully asleep. It's always someone's turn. You shift your weight, delicately, trying to find a corner of the mat that hasn't been crushed into submission. The straw digs into your shoulder blade like ancient memory. The linen covering your chest has bunched up under your neck, forming a small, itchy knot of suffering. You consider fixing it, but that would mean moving, and moving would mean waking someone, and waking someone would mean they might talk, or worse, snore louder. So you stay, silent, cramped, defiant. You begin to categorize the snores. You give them names: the wheeze, the whistle, the gargle, the distant thunder, the sudden apnea. You imagine them as animals in some poorly maintained zoo, each in their own enclosure, each performing at irregular intervals for no audience but you. Your aunt's second cough comes on cue. You don't flinch. You've grown used to the warning signs. the subtle roll of her ankle, the shift in her breathing. You are, against your will, an expert now, a scholar of involuntary noises, a curator of sleep disturbances. The cat rises and pads silently across the room, stepping over arms and legs with the poise of a priestess in a temple procession. She pauses near your feet, looks at you like this is all your fault, and then curls up again in a different spot. One you were considering claiming as your own just moments ago. Of course, a loud snort breaks through the pattern, like a drum strike in a ballad. Your brother again. He snuffles, groans, and then falls back into silence. For now, you count the seconds. 13, 14, 15, and then the whistling resumes. The fire in the corner has burned itself into a red-eyed sulk. No heat, just the occasional hiss from a stubborn ember refusing to let go. The room is not cold, but it isn't warm either. It is the kind of in-between that leaves your toes exposed and your shoulders damp. You try to tuck the blanket more tightly around your legs, but it catches on your cousin's elbow. You tug anyway. He grunts, but doesn't wake, probably dreaming of sleeping in a quiet house. The noises rise and fall like tides. At times they overlap in chaotic harmony, creating a wall of sound so complete it feels like static. At other moments, a single voice dominates the air, rising like a soloist in a particularly nasal opera. You are the unwilling audience. You do not applaud. Your own breath feels loud now. Too loud. You try to breathe more softly, more shallowly. You don't want to join the chorus. You want to vanish, to dissolve into the mat and become just one more lump beneath someone else's blanket. The night feels endless. Time moves here like honey spilled on stone, slow, sticky, and unhelpful. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to pretend you're somewhere else, somewhere quieter, somewhere where the air doesn't smell like people. But the snoring follows you, even there, a reminder that no escape is ever complete. Your sister lets out a sigh so long and theatrical that it startles the baby into a brief squeak. Everyone freezes, you included. Even the snores pause, like a breath held across the room. The moment stretches, then breaks. The baby quiets. The snores resume. You hear the gecko again, that sharp, clicking chirp from above the doorframe. It's quieter now. Maybe even the lizards are tired. And yet, the snoring continues. A background hum to your existence. The night's true heartbeat. You try not to be angry. You try not to care. But your muscles ache, your eyes burn, and your patience is as thin as your blanket. Eventually, it softens. Not disappears, never that, but the volume lowers. The breaths deepen. The rhythms slow. The baby sleeps. The uncle wheezes only once every few minutes. Even your brother's nose whistle flattens into something tolerable. You do not trust it, but you let your limbs settle anyway. The mat is still hard. The blanket still short. The smells still present. But for the first time in what feels like hours, you find a position that does not scream. Your ear rests on the corner of your arm, pressed just enough to mute the world. You can still hear them all, of course. The family, breathing, snoring, existing in their chaotic bodily way. But now it blends into the dark, becomes part of the silence. A kind of comfort if you squint hard enough at the concept. You let your eyes close again, not with hope, but with resignation. And as your breath finally joins theirs, shallow and uneven, you feel the room sigh with you. The shift ends, and another begins. Somewhere, far off, a donkey brays in the distance, just loud enough to remind you that real silence doesn't live here. But dreams, perhaps, still might, if you're lucky. The quiet that follows snoring is not silence. It's a temporary truce in a war of elbows and twitching feet, of wheezing breaths and shifting bodies. And as one cousin rolls over with a sigh that smells like onion stew and disappointment, you do your best not to inhale too deeply. The air is thick with reused breath, damp linen, and the faint, ever-present tang of unwashed humanity, like someone attempted to launder sleep itself and gave up halfway through. You inch slightly to the left, into the crook of a sibling's knee, and immediately regret it. Their skin is clammy, and somehow colder than yours. You didn't choose this spot. This spot found you, after the shuffling, the grumbling, the territorial negotiations that always follow nightfall. There's no ceremony to bedtime here. No your bed or my mat. There is only the collective assumption that you'll slot into place like a reed in a basket. You sleep wherever there is room, and room is a generous term. Technically, there is always space. It's just that none of it is good. You are wedged between two relatives, one of whom has a tendency to twitch violently at random intervals, and the other who whispers into their dreams with the slow, unnerving cadence of someone revealing secrets to ghosts. The mat beneath you is woven from whatever looked vaguely like rope at the time it was made. Reeds, palm fronds, leftover threads from some grander weaving ambition. It doesn't cushion so much as remind you of how soft nothing is. Every knotted line presses a quiet commentary into your side, tracing the shape of your ribs like a bored cartographer. You shift again, hoping for a better alignment, and succeed only in making your hip dig harder into the ground below. Someone coughs. It's wet. It's close. You pretend not to notice. To your right, a sibling has encroached into your defined arm territory. You know this by the sudden warmth near your elbow and the smell of whatever it is they sweat when they dream. It's sharp, tangy, and vaguely herbal, like old mustard. You lift your arm and let it hover mid-air, unsure where to rest it now. It's too late in the night for diplomacy. Everyone is already horizontal, already buried under the communal cloth that serves as a blanket, and moving too much would be social violence. So your arm simply floats there for a while, suspended in surrender, until fatigue pulls it back down to rest against your own stomach, like a scolded pet. The blanket is not really a blanket. It is a long, slightly damp rectangle of woven linen that once may have been white, but now carries the color of age and collective compromise. It covers all of you, more or less. Not equally, of course. Blanket fairness is a myth. The person who grabs first usually wins, and you were distracted tonight by a beetle crawling near your sleeping space. Now your left shoulder is exposed, cooling steadily as the night air seeps through the walls like gossip. The rest of the blanket is bunched around your knees, which are warm, if nothing else. Your toes, as always, remain in exile. A cousin to your left exhales loudly. Not a snore exactly, just a reminder that they're alive and that they have no regard for personal rhythm. The exhale tickles the hairs on your neck, and you press your chin downward to block it, burrowing deeper into the crook of your own arm. This, unfortunately, puts your face far too close to the mat, which now smells faintly of mildew, feet, and crushed bugs. You pretend it doesn't. You pretend a lot, actually. The family sleeps in layers, not stacked exactly, but patterned. The younger ones curl closer to the walls, where it's cooler, and the older ones claim the center, where the body heat accumulates like a forgotten soup. There is no true middle, just zones of relative safety. You've slept in all of them. You've learned which sibling kicks, which one shivers, which one dreams loudly about fish. You've cataloged it all, like a scholar of sleep who never got tenure. Tonight, you're in the middle third, which means you get stepped on in the morning, but breathe easier now. It's a fair trade. Somewhere near the door, someone mumbles something half-formed and sharply nasal. Another cousin grunts in return. Their conversation ends before it begins, swallowed by the heavy hush of shared exhaustion. It's not peaceful, but it's consistent. You lie still, resisting the urge to scratch the spot behind your knee where the mat itches most. To scratch would mean lifting the blanket. Lifting the blanket would release the accumulated warmth you've spent the last hour trapping. And warmth is a commodity. Even here. Especially here. Your foot touches another foot. You're not sure whose. It doesn't matter. The toes are dry, calloused, familiar. You don't flinch. You've spent every night of your life in this tangle of limbs and breath and barely clean cloth. To sleep here is to become part of a greater, sweaty mechanism. One creaks, the others shift. One farts, the others pretend they didn't hear. Everyone rotates clockwise at roughly the same time, as if choreographed by exhaustion itself. You think about rolling briefly, then you don't. A beetle skitters across your upper arm. You feel each tiny leg like a syllable of insult. You brush it off without ceremony, already knowing it will return. They always do. The dark belongs to them as much as it does to you. Maybe more. It's warm now. Too warm. Someone has trapped too much heat under the blanket and released it all at once. A wave of humidity rolls through your little square of the mat, carrying with it the distinct scent of sleep sweat and lentil stew. You turn your head to the side and breathe in the marginally cooler air near the edge of the cloth. It tastes like reed dust and resignation. The mat shifts beneath you. A sibling is adjusting their position. This means you must also adjust, unless you want their heel in your ribs again. You scoot an inch backward and collide softly with someone's shoulder. They grunt. You grunt back. It is the closest thing to communication you will allow tonight. Outside, a donkey brays at an hour that feels deliberately spiteful. The family doesn't stir. The donkey always brays. You suspect it has opinions on your bedtime, and none of them are kind. You blink slowly, counting the breaths between snores. The family has rhythm, a strange overlapping melody of breath, wheeze, and occasional muttering. It's almost soothing if you ignore the personal space violations. You've tried sleeping alone once. Once. It was quieter, yes, but also colder, lonelier. You miss the smell of cabbage breath and the sound of distant uncle snores. Even now, as your back begins to ache from the uneven mat, and your foot finds itself crushed beneath an inattentive heel, you know you'd rather be here. Miserable together is still together. Eventually, your eyelids droop. Your thoughts blur. You try to remember if you left your water jar uncovered, if the goat is still tethered, if that beetle will return to its preferred highway across your chest. But the thoughts fade before they settle. You are not comfortable. You are not alone. You are simply horizontal. The line of bodies beside you stretches into the dark, each one curled or sprawled or tucked like laundry on a rope, left out to dry in the midnight wind. You are one of them, drying, softening, sagging into sleep. Just another knot in the long thread of family, fraying softly at the edges. And somewhere in that warm, heavy air, just as your thoughts begin to scatter like dropped lentils, you hear the unmistakable buzz of a mosquito returning for your ear. Again. But that is tomorrow's problem. Sleep, when it comes, folds itself around you like reused cloth. Thin, familiar, and slightly too damp. The blanket hasn't moved in hours, yet it has somehow betrayed you. Your lower back is exposed, the edge curled up like a wilted reed under the weight of someone's restless feet. You're too tired to fix it and too cold to ignore it. And so, you hover there, half asleep, half resentful, as the night stretches its long, sticky fingers across your limbs. You exhale through your nose and try to pretend this is what comfort feels like. The truth is, you're not sure anymore. The mat has molded itself into your ribs, and you've lost feeling in your right hand sometime after your cousin rolled onto your wrist. The house is quiet, or rather, it's pretending to be. You've learned not to trust silence. It's not real, not here, not ever. In the stillness, other sounds begin to surface, the kind that only exist when no one is talking, when all movement has slowed to the pace of breath and twitch. There's the soft, wet click of a sibling's tongue against the roof of their mouth as they sleep. the creak of a reed mat adjusting itself beneath the weight of too many elbows. A sneeze, muted but aggressive, from somewhere by the doorway, followed by the hiss of someone pretending not to wake up from it. This is the silence that isn't silent, the hush of a home trying not to be heard. You lie there, eyes half closed, listening to every unspoken argument the room is having with itself. Your uncle's breath arrives in staccato bursts, like he's practicing shallow percussion in his dreams. A cousin mutters something unintelligible, sighs, then flips over, blanket pulled tighter, as if he's entitled to more of it just because he's taller. You do not protest. Protesting means movement, and movement invites eye contact. You've been burned before. Above you, the roof groans softly, settling like bones remembering they are old. The mud-brick walls don't creak so much as exhale. They shift slightly, expanding and contracting as the desert night begins to turn cold in earnest. The heat that clung to them all day has finally let go, and now the walls breathe like tired lungs. Everything breathes. Everything leaks sound. Even the goat outside seems to know better than to disturb the hour, but it does anyway, once. A single bleat, pitiful and unsure, like it stubbed its hoof on a rock it forgot was there. No one answers, not even the wind, and yet you know the goat is still watching. Its dumb eyes trained on the same crack in the door. It stares at every night, waiting for it to open like a divine mistake. Someone's foot slides against your shin. The nails are sharp. You consider vengeance, but the silence is too fragile. You know that one false move could collapse the entire illusion, that somehow everyone is asleep and you are the only one aware. You aren't, of course. At least 3 others are doing exactly what you are, laying still, counting the things that are not quiet. Somewhere, a gnat dives through the air with a sound like a tiny insult. You hear its buzz approach, veer, disappear, then return, louder, bolder. You slap at the air near your face, striking only the warmth of your own breath. The sound echoes slightly, and for a moment, everything pauses. Even the goat. A cousin stirs, a toe curls. Then it resumes. The breathing, the shifting, the subtle shared surrender to discomfort. The silence continues to unravel in tiny threads. The clay floor beneath your mat has cooled too much. The warmth you stole from it earlier has fled, abandoning you to the cold kiss of earth through 2 thin reeds. You shift your hip just slightly to find a warmer patch, but instead, you discover a stone. A small, unyielding pebble of a thing that has decided to be exactly where your hip bone wants to be. You sigh. The pebble doesn't care. Your mother coughs gently from the other end of the room, and you feel it in the walls. Not loudly, not sickly, just enough to remind you that her chest has never fully forgiven her for breathing in too many years of cook-fire smoke. Her coughs always sound like they've been pre-chewed. No one reacts. She does this every night. It is part of the song. A moth flutters against the back wall, its wings tapping lightly at the edge of the reed basket hung there. It is a ridiculous sound, like someone writing with a quill made of feathers and regret. You hear the flutter stop, then begin again, then stop. You wait for it to become rhythm. It never does. Your eyes adjust further in the dark, and now you can see outlines. The dome of your cousin's back, rising and falling like a tired bread loaf. The faint flicker of light from outside. The last ember of someone else's fire dying beyond your home's edge. You wonder if the neighbor's goat also stared at their door. If their cousin also mutters fish names in their sleep. Probably. You cannot sleep yet. Not with all this silence. You try to count the layers of cloth draped across your legs. There are 2, though one might technically be a robe, rebranded for nighttime due to poor stitching and stubbornness. It is damp in one corner, not from anything sinister, just from being too close to a sibling's knee for too long. You shift it slightly, exposing your thigh to the air. Immediate regret. You cover it again and hope no one noticed the betrayal. The far corner of the room smells faintly of spilled oil, which is somehow worse than fresh oil. It has that stale tang of something that once meant to be useful, but now simply exists. Your brain catalogs it, stores the information. Smells like that always mean something, just not anything useful in the moment. You listen again. There it is. The high-pitched whistle of someone's nose failing to cooperate with their sinuses. It is the kind of sound that feels both personal and avoidable. You grit your teeth. Not out of anger, just tradition. You've been doing it since you were small, whenever sleep seemed optional. The silence stretches again, wide and thin, like a sun-bleached rag. It covers everything but keeps nothing out. You think about tomorrow, but only barely. Morning is far away. It belongs to another life, the one where your feet hit the cold floor and your joints remind you that you are not as young as you pretend to be, that life will arrive in due time, like all unwanted guests. For now, you are here, wrapped in layers of not quite silence, pressed between bodies that share your air, your heat, your family name. No one moves with purpose, no one speaks, but everyone exists, loudly, softly, in the awkward symphony of communal sleep. And eventually, somewhere between your cousin's sigh and the gnat's final victory lap around your ear, you begin to drift. Not sleep exactly, just less awake. The silence continues, full of sound, and under it, your thoughts dissolve, one discomfort at a time. You are sinking now, gently, into a world that doesn't mind if you're horizontal, even if the mat minds very much. You don't remember falling asleep. That's how it always begins, if it can even be called a beginning. There's no ceremony, no grand transition, just a sensation of something folding over you, like a wet linen sheet pulled gently across your eyes. One moment you are still scratching your leg where the mosquito claimed ancestral rights, and the next, you're not sure which direction the ceiling is in, or if your leg is still your leg at all. It doesn't feel like sleep, not the warm, cushioned, soft kind you envy in tomb paintings. No reclining on curved couches in diaphanous robes. No golden cat curled at your side like a purring deity of serenity. Instead, this feels more like slipping through the cracks in your own thoughts. You drift into unconsciousness, not on a feather-stuffed mattress, but on the loose splinters of the day's fatigue, wedged between the snores of your cousin and the steady drip from the roof's corner. It begins with symbols, not words, not images, not even sounds, just symbols sliding past the inside of your eyelids as if someone dipped your brain in ink and scrolled it across a reed mat. A crocodile sideways, a hawk with a sun disk, a loaf of bread beside a seated man who seems to be either wise or deeply constipated. None of it makes sense, but it doesn't try to. The dream speaks in a dialect older than grammar, older than sleep, older than even your grandmother's stories. And yet, you understand. Sort of. The crocodile is not just a crocodile. It's your fear, your memory of the time you dropped a whole clay cup and swore your mother would feed you to Sobek himself. The hawk with the disc? That might be the sun, or your brother, or the way your body aches when you stretch in the morning. It's dream logic, tangible as stone 1 second, dissolving into sand the next. You shuffle through a marketplace where no one walks but everyone floats. Their feet don't touch the ground, yet you still feel the dust rising into your nose. You pass a man whose head is a jackal, and he nods at you like you're both in on something vague and ancient. You nod back. It feels polite. You taste honey on your tongue, though you haven't eaten in hours, and the sweetness leaves behind a whisper of regret, like something you were supposed to remember but didn't. The dream doesn't ask questions. It gives answers you never needed. A baboon counts stars and offers you one. You take it. It turns into a scarab in your hand, then a fig, then a rock, then your own missing sandal. It's oddly comforting. It tells you you're still you, even here, where nothing listens to time. Somewhere in the fog of symbols and shifting sand, you find yourself floating above the village. But your body hasn't moved. You're both inside and outside yourself, watching your family curled up like parentheses across the sleeping mat. The goats are motionless. Even the snoring has stilled, replaced by the soft muttering of wind through palm fronds and a night bird you've never seen but always heard. Your own chest rises and falls beneath you like the Nile, steady, muddy, and always slightly too warm. A priest walks past carrying a tray of nothing, absolutely nothing. The tray glows. You bow instinctively. The priest disappears into a doorway shaped like an eye, and you are left holding the weight of absence. It feels like a memory you haven't made yet. The dream does not end. It just tilts. You are underwater now. You didn't enter it. It entered you. You breathe like you always have, though your lungs feel syrupy. A school of fish writes poetry in bubbles around your face. You can't read it, but you weep anyway, quietly, internally, as one does when deeply moved by something that feels true, even if you can't explain why. Your father appears with the head of a falcon and offers you a palm full of bees. You take one. It hums a lullaby that sounds suspiciously like your grandmother's scolding, only slower and more melodic. You laugh in the dream, or maybe outside the dream. Someone shifts next to you and lets out a whimper. You wonder if they're dreaming too, and if their symbols are any kinder. There is a door. There is always a door. You never open it, but you always notice it. It's made of mudbrick and water and silence. Behind it, you think there is something important, an answer or a goat or just slightly cooler air. You never open it. The dream never lets you. You are not ready, or the door isn't, or maybe the door is waiting for someone else. You walk through corridors made of dates, but they dissolve as you step. The floor is soft and sticky and smells like overripe figs. A cat watches from a ledge made of woven baskets. Its eyes are full of knowing and judgment. You try to ask it something but forget the question halfway through, and instead hand it a fish made of stars. It accepts. You are relieved. You didn't know there was a test, but it feels like you passed. Everything smells like old sweat and melted resin. The kind of scent that lingers after incense has done its best, but the truth remains. The truth is, you're tired. Even in your dreams, you're tired. Not sleepy. Tired. Bone deep. Like a wall that's been sunbaked too many years and knows the next flood is coming whether it's ready or not. Someone whispers in your ear. It's not a language you know, but it's one you believe. You nod. You don't know why. The ground beneath you shifts again, and you're falling, but not fast. Falling the way a leaf might, or a sigh. You land in a garden that only exists in memory. A garden you've never visited but recognize. The trees are the ones that grew outside your great-aunt's window, though you never met her, and the window has long since vanished. You smell her cooking anyway. It makes you feel 7, which is neither good nor bad, just accurate. You try to lie down, but the ground is tilted like a broken bed frame. You lie sideways instead, which feels oddly correct. You look up and see the ceiling of your real room. Cracked mud, reeds poking through, a single spider leg dangling from a place it shouldn't. But you're still asleep, still dreaming. The bed holds your body, but your mind is riding a barge across a sky made of bronze. The symbols return. They drift by like leaves in a canal. An ankh, a lion, a loaf, a duck, a hand, a swirl. You stop trying to read them. They are not for reading. They are for feeling, like heat or grief. You absorb them the way you absorb the scratch of your tunic or the sound of your uncle's phlegmy snore. You learn nothing, and somehow everything. The dream begins to dim, not end, just fade. The symbols blur, the faces melt. The garden folds back into the sky. The hawk with the sun disk nods once, and you feel something like permission. The priest with the empty tray walks backward into the eye-shaped doorway and shuts it softly with a sound like woven reed on sand. You feel your limbs again, not fully, but enough to sense the itch returning in your knee and the sweat pooling behind your neck. The bed creaks beneath you. Someone has shifted again. The cat coughs in the corner. A cousin mutters something incoherent. The dream loosens its grip. You slide upward through the layers of your own breath, but not all the way. Not yet. There's still the comfort of darkness, and the next breath, and the warmth of another body too close beside you. The dream isn't gone. It just steps politely to the side, waiting in the corners of your mind, where it will linger until morning, unread, undeciphered, but deeply familiar. And as the silence settles again, you notice the faint rustle of someone else reclaiming your corner of the mat. Just in time for the next chapter, when the bed you briefly escaped is no longer yours. You return from the dream like stepping off a barge into warm, familiar mud. Your body is still here, roughly where you left it, though it has shifted in your absence. The mat beneath you has grown coarser in texture, and the lump that used to be your cousin's foot now digs into your spine with the slow certainty of erosion. You don't open your eyes, not yet. That would be too much effort, and besides, there is very little to see in this darkness, but a ceiling you already know by feel. One cracked patch, one flake of reed netting that always threatens to drop onto your forehead like a tiny divine punishment. Still, something is different. Something subtle, like the way the air feels heavier, or the precise warmth pressing into your shoulder. It's the kind of wrongness that isn't loud, but permanent. You shift slightly, trying not to disturb the fragile layer of stillness draped over the household, and confirm your suspicion. Someone is in your spot. You are quite certain of this, even if your bones are the only ones that seem to care. It isn't an argument, not out loud. There is no need to declare your rights over this small stretch of scratchy linen and packed dirt. That would require breath, and breath might require conversation, and conversation might invite further loss of territory. This is not a war of words, but a quiet reclaiming. Like retaking an ancestral tomb, you inch back toward the small concavity your body had carved into the bedding over the last few nights. It's not much. It barely holds your shape anymore. But it's yours, or was. Your cousin doesn't move, but they also don't need to. Their body sprawls diagonally in the eternal geometry of the unapologetically asleep. A knee extends like a ruling scepter across your midsection. One elbow juts out with royal disregard. You sigh without sound. You are not alone in this irritation. Someone else sighs too. Your sibling, probably. The long, mournful kind that carries centuries of resigned suffering in a single breath. A cousin, a sibling, a goat. Everyone is guilty eventually. The truth is, no one owns the bed. Not really. It's a communal arrangement, in the same way that fire is communal, or the single water jar that someone keeps forgetting to refill. The mat belongs to whoever gets there first, whoever is most tired, or whoever has the sharpest elbows. Ownership is less about rights and more about endurance. You must endure the late-night shuffle of limbs, the reassignments of space, the silent treaty violations carried out beneath a fraying wool blanket. Sometimes you find a beetle in your corner. It is not the worst visitor. The bed, such as it is a mat of reeds padded with something that once tried to be soft. Some nights, it pretends to offer comfort. Other nights, it reminds you that comfort is not the point. You curl yourself around the memory of your spot. You mark its borders with knees and forearms, hoping to hold it a little longer before the next shift. Bodies rotate in sleep like celestial objects, only louder and with more elbows. You find yourself adapting, folding into the gaps, adjusting your spine around someone else's heel like water around a rock. The goat, naturally, is exempt from these rules. It occupies a corner it didn't ask for and has never been asked to leave. Its presence is tolerated for the warmth it brings, and occasionally for the entertainment when it tries to chew someone's hair. Tonight, you feel its breath against your ankle, soft, damp, and slightly fragrant, like something that has chewed too much straw and not enough shame. You accept it. It's warmer than your cousin. There is no point in complaining. Complaints here are like fireflies. Brief, unnoticed, swatted away. The elders have long since accepted the fluidity of sleep territory. They lie still, hands crossed over their chests, as though already preparing for a more permanent form of rest. They do not stir. They do not flinch. They have mastered the art of pretending to be statues until morning. You, on the other hand, are still learning. The air grows heavier as the night deepens. It settles over the room like damp cloth, pressing into your nostrils, your neck, the shallow places beneath your knees. You try not to think about sweat. It only makes it worse. Someone beside you shifts, and the mat adjusts with a long, suffering sigh, like a laborer who's worked too many seasons in the sun and just wants to be left alone. The mat does not remember you. That's the part that stings, in a quiet, unnecessary way. You gave it your back, your elbows, your lower ribs. You warmed it. You whispered to it through your dreams. And still, come morning, it will show no loyalty. It will cradle anyone. It will betray you again. You know this, and still you return. In the darkness, everything merges. You lose track of limbs, of sounds, of smells. The shape of your body becomes hypothetical, suggested more by resistance than sensation. You are no longer certain where you end and someone else begins. Your brother's breath? Maybe. Or the goat's. Or the wind through the crack in the eastern wall. All of it blends into a shared rhythm, the slow exhale of people too tired to be individual. The mat is not wide enough. It never has been. It is a ribbon of compromise, stretched thin across the floor. You lie on your side now because your back is tired and your stomach makes it feel like you're drowning in your own ribs. On your side, you are a spoon pressed into other spoons, a shape carved by necessity, not choice. Someone's hair is in your mouth. You breathe it out, gently. It returns. You breathe again. You do not move. Movement invites chaos. You let the hair rest like a curse you've earned. The night continues without permission. It slouches onward, ignoring your discomfort and the goat's occasional bleats. Somewhere, someone is muttering in their sleep. The words are nonsense, but you believe them anyway. Dreams do not require logic, only participation. The mat shifts again. A cousin has rolled toward the center, displacing a sibling who now encroaches on your reclaimed corner. The bed is being redrawn beneath you like a river changing course. You adapt. You become narrower. You sacrifice a hip, then a knee, then all the space between your shoulder blades and your dignity. You keep one arm curled beneath you, the other draped over your chest, like a protective spell. It doesn't work. Nothing stops a determined sleeper. You try to imagine a better bed, one made of feathers and wrapped in cool linen, like the ones the nobles sleep on in houses built to outlast time. But even your imagination is tired. It can't maintain the illusion. Instead, it gives you a stone slab, smooth and dry, alone in a room with no goats. You smile at the fantasy. A stone slab would be a luxury. The mat sags. You sink. The pressure on your hip increases. You ignore it. You drift somewhere between wakefulness and surrender, where pain becomes background noise and dreams arrive like soft thieves. And still, the bed is not yours. You know this now. It belongs to the night, to anyone who needs it, to the weight of bodies arranged not by comfort, but by habit. It holds the history of everyone who has lain upon it, sweat-stained, story-soaked, mildly goat-scented. but it never holds you for long. And as your limbs go numb in a new pattern, and someone else exhales directly into your ear, and your corner of the mat becomes even less yours than it was at the start, you finally accept that beds, like peace and privacy, are things to be negotiated, not granted. Perhaps tomorrow you'll claim the spot beside the wall, or near the door, or in the far corner where the air moves slightly better. But for now, you remain here, pressed between knees and elbows and one particularly judgmental goat. Still, mostly still, listening for the breeze that comes with midnight, when the air will cool just enough to tease sleep back onto your skin. A sleep you'll soon chase again, even if it never quite finds the same place twice. The moment you almost fall asleep, the mat betrays you. It shifts slightly under someone else's weight. Barely a rustle, just enough to nudge your spine and remind your limbs that rest is provisional. You lie still, blinking into the thick dark that is not quite silence and not quite solitude, and slowly become aware of the air. It's different now, less oppressive. The heat that ruled the day like a tyrant has stepped aside, leaving its pale cousin behind. Cooler, yes, but cooler in the way a damp cloth is cool after it's been wrung out over your face. It does not refresh. It lingers. The breeze slips in like a rumor. You feel it before you hear it. A subtle shift against your cheeks, a faint rustling from the papyrus basket near your feet. For a moment, you allow yourself to believe this is relief, that the worst is over, that perhaps, finally, sleep will arrive not as a negotiation, but as a gift, a generous one, something with ribbon perhaps. But the night has its own terms, always. You breathe in deeply, tasting dust that's grown tired of floating and has settled gently across your teeth. The air, though lighter, is dry in a way that clings. It licks at your skin and settles in your nose like a soft complaint. You shift your position. Your ankle knocks something solid, probably your sibling's elbow, or possibly the small ceramic jar someone forgot to put away. Either way, it stays where it is. Everything does, except your comfort. Your mat is suddenly too rough. The fibers that felt merely indifferent an hour ago now seem to scrape across your shoulder blades with all the grace of a woven insult. You try to burrow into the patch that's slightly softer, but someone has claimed that already. Possibly the goat. She's not above such tactics. She is warm, though, and sleeping next to her brings a kind of warmth that is less emotional and more barnyard. Still, she doesn't snore. That counts for something. The breeze returns, stronger this time. It curls beneath the reed door, then climbs your body with the hesitation of a guest who wasn't invited, but knows they'll be tolerated. It finds the damp at your neck and cools it in such a way that your skin recoils. You pull the linen over your shoulders, but it's too thin to matter. It might as well be a suggestion. Night in Egypt is not cold, not in the way faraway lands speak of it, but it knows how to pinch. It knows how to prod. It is clever, and it knows how to make you wish for the warmth you cursed all afternoon. Your body is confused. It remembers the heat. Your legs still sweat while your arms begin to chill. You feel betrayed, not just by the climate, but by your own limbs. They can't agree on what season it is. The linen sheet you use has 3 jobs: to shield, to soften, and to offer the illusion of control. It fails at all of them. You wrap it around your legs, then your arms, then your head, trying to find the right way to trick your body into calm. You do not succeed. Your cousin stirs beside you, tugging part of the sheet away, and now your shoulder is exposed to the night air. It is too much and not enough. It's like being kissed by a shadow with chapped lips. You listen to the house breathing, not just the people, the entire space. The thatch rustling above, the occasional thump of a settling jar, the goat's steady exhale, someone snoring with all the dignity of a broken jug. The clay walls click as they cool. It is not silence. It is a conversation you are not part of, but cannot avoid hearing. There's a mosquito. Just one. Or so you hope. It whispers past your ear and disappears again, like a critic from another life. You wait for the bite, knowing it will land where your skin is thinnest. Possibly your ankle. Possibly your elbow. You no longer fear the bite itself. You fear the moment it itches, and you cannot scratch without waking someone who matters more than your comfort. You once asked your grandmother if the nights had always been this difficult. She looked at you, unsmiling, and said, "No, some were worse." Then she went back to sleep without another word. She is across the room now, curled like a bundle of reeds, unmoved by air or discomfort. Her body knows how to make peace with cold. Yours still negotiates. There is a small hole in the wall, meant for light, though it mostly lets in moths and the occasional sigh of wind. Tonight, it frames the sky in a slice so narrow it feels sacred. You can't see the stars, but you know they're there. Someone once said they were the eyes of the dead. That seems unhelpful at the moment. You don't want to be watched, not when you've wrapped your head like a bread roll and are sweating through your knees. The air continues its campaign, slow and methodical. It is cooler now than it was earlier, but not evenly. Some parts of your body ache with heat, others flinch with chill. You are a patchwork quilt of complaints. The worst part is that you cannot escape it. You cannot rise and walk away from the night. There is nowhere to go. The village is asleep. The animals are asleep. Even the river seems to be holding its breath. You shift again, slower this time. The mat creaks. Someone groans. You stop. You wait. The night resumes. The goat huffs, annoyed, and repositions herself closer to your feet. You accept this. She is warmer than the breeze. In the corner, your younger sibling mumbles nonsense. It's unclear whether it's dream or illness, but no one moves to check. You all monitor by ear now, trained to measure worry by tone, not words. The sound is small, harmless. You return to your own inner litany of discomfort. You try to think of cool things, wet clay, riverbanks, shade. But the moment you focus, the night proves you wrong. A breeze touches your stomach where your shirt has ridden up. It is shocking in its honesty. You pull the linen tighter, angry at it for having the audacity to be both too hot and too cold. Time folds in on itself. You cannot tell how long you've been lying here. Could be an hour. Could be 4. The moon, if it is even out, does not care to tell you. Your only sense of time is your body growing more tired of itself. You ache in strange places. Your hip bone is arguing with the mat. Your shoulder has gone to sleep, but you haven't. The night air shifts again, this time bringing with it the smell of fire smoke from a neighbor's hearth. It's old smoke, yesterday's probably, but it still finds a way in. Everything does. The house breathes in, and you breathe it too. Ash and straw. Someone's failed bread. Maybe yours. A beetle crawls across your arm. You pretend not to feel it. Someone's foot brushes yours, and for a moment, the contact is enough to ground you. You're still here, still alive, still fighting for sleep in a house where the air is fickle and the space is shared with too many other dreams. Eventually, your body will give up. Not out of satisfaction, but from sheer exhaustion. You know this. You've trained it to collapse, not to surrender. Sleep will not come as a gift. It will come as a truce, a brief one. You will lie here until the night allows you to forget it exists. The breeze quiets again. It doesn't stop. It simply waits. Like everything else in this place, it knows how to take turns. It will be back. So will the mosquito. So will the ache behind your left knee. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to hide from the reminder that you are always too warm or too cold, too pressed or too alone. You imagine a breeze that is just right, that carries neither dust nor judgment. You know it's a lie, but it helps. Outside, a dog barks once and is hushed. Inside, the house settles deeper into its crooked comfort. And you, still balancing between chill and sweat, wait for the hour when the air tips again, when the cold begins to outweigh the heat just enough to make you miss it. The floor still holds the shape of your body, not out of warmth or fondness, but because the reeds don't spring back the way they once did. That, or you've simply lain there long enough that the impression has become permanent. You shift slightly, trying to find a less familiar angle on discomfort, but the mat beneath you responds with a crunch that echoes through the darkness like a judgment. Somewhere beside you, someone exhales through their nose too sharply, too suddenly, and it sets off the soft chain reaction of others stirring, adjusting, grunting, each sound the ancient Egyptian version of, "You woke me up again." But you didn't. Not really. They weren't sleeping. Not deeply. Not with all of this going on. The air tonight is a blanket made of lint and rumor, too thick to breathe easily, but too flimsy to keep anything out. Not the whispers, not the gnats, and certainly not whatever it is that's making your cousin wheeze like a cracked bellows. His breath catches at odd intervals, sometimes with a wet hiccup, sometimes with a sharp whistle that sounds like it's being dragged through cloth. No one says anything. No one ever does. You just lie there, side by side, foot to foot, arm to rib, and hope that the noises stay just noises, that they don't become something more solid. When you were younger, you believed that darkness had a shape, a softness. Now you know better. Darkness is brittle. It shatters with the smallest sound. A cough, a creak, the distant scrape of pottery on stone. And when it breaks, what spills out isn't light. It's fear. Not the kind that makes you scream. The older kind. The kind that hums beneath your ribs and makes your stomach tighten without reason. The kind you feel when someone in the village says, "There's something going around," and then stops talking. You try not to listen, but of course you do. You listen for the telltale throat clear of someone trying not to cough. You listen for the long silences where a child should be breathing. You count sneezes like omens. 3 in a row means dust. 5 might mean something worse. There are mutterings near the wall. An older woman speaking to herself, or perhaps to her shadow. She lists the things someone has touched. The door latch, the water jar, the sleeping mat, the small clay idol by the threshold. You can hear her fingers counting them off by the soft tap of nail against wood. A neighbor across the way groans softly and then stops, too abruptly. You wonder whether they've fallen asleep again, or whether they've fallen into something deeper, something less reversible. You wait for the sound to come back. It doesn't. Eventually, someone else clears their throat loudly, deliberately, as though challenging the silence to answer back. It doesn't. There's a child curled on the far end of the room who talks in their sleep. Or maybe it's not talking. Maybe it's just the fever letting its thoughts wander through their mouth. They mutter nonsense, snippets of dreams, or half-remembered phrases overheard from adults. At one point, you think they say your name, but in a voice that doesn't sound like them. You close your eyes tightly, as if that will help. It doesn't. The room remains unchanged, thick with breathing and the tiny, quiet horror of uncertainty. The walls are thinner than you pretend they are. Someone next door has a fit of coughing that sounds biblical. You picture their household lying awake like yours, staring into nothing, afraid to move too loudly in case it makes the sickness aware of them. Illness is a shy creature, but vengeful. It visits homes like a guest and stays like a ghost. You pull the blanket, if you can call it that, closer around your shoulders. It smells like mildew and comfort. Familiar, but not clean. It's hard to tell what your skin is reacting to anymore. Is it the linen? The air? The dust? The creeping dread? You itch in strange places and resist the urge to scratch because scratching is noisy. And noise is a signal, and signals attract attention. There are whispers again. You try not to hear them. Someone says something about the old woman at the edge of the village, that she gave someone a stare last week and now their husband can't breathe. Someone else mutters that maybe she stared because he already looked ill. It's unclear whether the disagreement is meant to reassure or escalate. Neither works. The rumor has already planted itself like a burr in the collective sleep. It will be repeated, reshaped, and rebelieved by morning. You shift again and feel the brittle click of your spine reminding you that you are not young, that no one truly is, not in a place like this. Age begins early and ends without ceremony. Sleep would help, in theory, but sleep requires surrender. And tonight, surrender feels unwise. You lie on your side, then your back, then your side again, trying to outmaneuver the night like a strategist with a poor grasp of geography. Your sister mumbles something and kicks in her sleep. Her heel finds your shin like a homing pigeon. You inhale sharply but make no sound. Even pain knows its place here. It is allowed but not encouraged. You lie still, absorbing the ache like a sponge pressed against stone. It becomes part of you. Everything does eventually. You hear someone get up quietly. The sound of their foot brushing the packed earth floor is like silk scraping sand. They step outside, perhaps to relieve themselves, perhaps to breathe, perhaps to cry without judgment. You never know. You only notice their absence, the way a room feels when one soul slips out of it like steam through a crack. Time folds in on itself. Has it been an hour? A week? You think you may have dozed, but the itch in your scalp assures you otherwise. Or maybe you dreamed about itching. It's hard to tell. Dreams, when they do arrive, are not linear. They melt at the edges and swirl into one another like ink dropped in water. In one, you are floating down the Nile, but the water is made of rice. In another, your cousin is a falcon and speaks perfect old Egyptian, except he's just describing types of coughs. You blink. You think you hear the sound of someone crying, but it might just be a goat outside, arguing with the wind. You prefer the goat. At least the goat is honest. It doesn't pretend to be anything else. You shift again. A sliver of cool air brushes your face, a blessing you didn't ask for but accept like a guilty treat. You breathe it in deeply, trying not to cough. You succeed. Barely. The night stretches. It always does. Not in hours, but in density. You begin to wonder if morning will ever come, or if this is one of those endless nights that ancient people whispered about when they thought time could get stuck. You wouldn't be surprised. Nothing surprises you anymore. Not the rumors, not the fevers, not the dreams that smell like onions. Eventually, the child stops murmuring. Your cousin's breathing evens out, but not in a reassuring way, just in a quieter way. The whispers stop. One by one, the tiny sounds surrender. The room becomes soft again. Not silent, never silent, but softer. The kind of quiet that feels like a blanket over your thoughts. You let your eyes close and don't immediately open them again. That's the closest thing to sleep you'll manage tonight. And as your breathing finally begins to mimic rest, uneven, tentative, but present, you hear it. Faint, but insistent. The wind has shifted. The air feels thinner, cooler. It presses through the gaps in the walls and stirs the back of your neck. It brings no relief, only contrast. And with it, the next misery, the cold. But that comes next. Let it come quietly. Let it come slow. The heat has faded, but not completely. Just enough to remind you that comfort is always temporary and never complete. Your mat, pressed flat from years of use, offers the kind of support that only amplifies the misalignment of your spine. You settle into the shape it has already decided for you, though it was never carved with your back in mind. The linen blanket is twisted, one edge damp from sweat, the other dry and stiff like an old leaf. You pull it halfway over your legs, which doesn't solve anything, but gives your mind something to focus on besides the itch forming just beneath your left shoulder blade. An itch you cannot reach, and likely never will. The air smells like woven dust, old straw, tired sweat, the faint sharpness of crushed insects. Someone nearby is breathing in short, whistling bursts, the rhythm broken only by a grunt that might be from your uncle or your neighbor or one of the goats. You try not to think about how little space separates them all. At some point, the line between family and livestock ceased to matter, especially after nightfall, when everyone becomes just another source of body heat and noise. Your eyes flutter closed again, more from boredom than fatigue. For a moment, there is blackness, then a creak, a shift, a whimper, maybe from your cousin, maybe from the wind sliding through a cracked wall. You're not sure. You never are at this hour. The world becomes a murky soup of sounds and movements, every one of them interrupting just as you begin to drift. Someone turns in their sleep, dragging a limb across the floor like a wet sack of grain. A toenail scratches reed matting. You hear a muffled cough, followed by a silence that feels too intentional. There is always a moment when you wonder if someone has died. Not in a dramatic way, just in a quiet, resigned, end-of-a-long-day way. You don't sit up to check. You just listen for another breath, the twitch of a leg, the subtle thump of life continuing despite the circumstances. It usually comes. Usually. A mosquito finds you again, as it does every night. Not a new one, surely. This one knows your scent, your weaknesses, your inability to swat with any precision in the dark. It circles above your cheek with the dedication of a tax collector and the grace of a drunken beetle. You feel it land, soft, smug. You flick at it instinctively, half asleep, fully annoyed. You miss, of course. You always do. The bite itches instantly, as though your skin is staging a protest against your whole existence. Sleep comes in slivers, not waves, not clouds, shards. You lie still long enough to slide into something that might be rest, only to be yanked back by a groan from the corner, or a particularly aggressive snore that somehow echoes off walls made of mud and straw. The goat shifts beside your mat, its warm breath puffing against your elbow. It has claimed your edge again, stubborn and unrepentant, chewing on a dream you're not part of. You turn, slowly. Your shoulder sticks to the mat with a sweat that's dried just enough to function as glue. When you lift your arm, it peels with a sound like parchment tearing. You pretend not to notice and reposition yourself in the exact same position you tried before, hoping it will be different this time. It won't be. Outside, the wind moans low through palm fronds and half-plastered walls. It doesn't cool you. It only reminds you that relief exists, just not here. You hear the distant thump of sandals slapping earth, someone moving through the dark. Maybe a neighbor relieving himself. Maybe a cousin looking for a better mat. Maybe someone sleepwalking toward a date with a very startled chicken. You will not investigate. Your mind drifts to odd places now, to the shape of your aunt's bunion, to the mystery of how your sister's foot always ends up under your chin, to the question of whether the roof might fall in if everyone sneezes at once. These are the thoughts that visit you at this hour, absurd and unstoppable, like a parade of unwanted guests who bring no gifts and eat all your dried figs. You doze. You know this only because time has passed, though you have no idea how much. The room is the same. The sweat is the same. But your thoughts are less jagged now, less precise. You no longer mind the goat's warmth. You no longer flinch at the sound of coughing. You are not asleep exactly, but you are no longer quite awake. You exist in that soft, foggy place where dreams flirt with memory and everything smells faintly of dust. Your mother sighs in her sleep. a long, slow exhale that sounds like someone accepting defeat. Your father mutters something unintelligible and swats the air. You think about doing the same, but your hand is too far from your intention. So you let it rest. The mat dips slightly as someone shifts their weight. A child whimpers. A gnat lands on your lip. You twitch but do not fully return. You are no longer chasing sleep. It has stopped just long enough for you to catch up, winded but willing. And then, finally, stillness. Not silence, no. There's always some movement, some creak, some shuffle. But a stillness within you, a slowing, a softening. Your breath becomes heavier, less deliberate. The itch behind your ear dulls into the background noise of being alive. The heat of the goat becomes tolerable. The roughness of the linen blanket becomes almost bearable. And your mind ceases to ask questions. Dreams slip in quietly, like children sneaking into forbidden rooms. One moment you're thinking about the straw roof and the way it leaks when it's not supposed to. And the next you're floating on a boat made entirely of fish scales, being rowed by someone who looks like your uncle, but has the voice of your neighbor's dog. You accept it. There is no other option. And when the rooster begins to consider waking, when the first breeze of morning stirs the edge of your mat, you are finally, truly asleep. For now, it happens quietly at first, like betrayal, a shift in the air, a warmth that doesn't come from bodies or breath, but from something far more aggressive, something ancient and unrelenting and cruel in its punctuality. The night has not been generous, but it has at least been tolerable. You slept, not deeply, not continuously, but enough to lose track of time and dream of impossible things. A cart made of reeds, a cat that speaks in proverbs, your mat floating on the Nile like a funeral barge for someone who still owes taxes. The memory is already fading, dissolving into the warmth now curling around your ankles and creeping up your spine. You do not open your eyes yet. There is a tiny hope, absurd and familiar, that if you remain still enough, if you hold your breath and do not move, then maybe the day will not notice you. Maybe the rooster will forget. Maybe your mother's rustling in the corner is just a passing dream. But then your cousin coughs, sharp, wet, decisive. A goat bleats into your ear as if confirming the world has resumed its dreadful momentum. There is no going back now. Not really. Your mouth tastes like old barley and older regret. Dry, coated, like someone left a handful of sand beneath your tongue during the night and politely forgot to mention it. Your jaw aches faintly, as if you've been chewing something imaginary in your sleep. Perhaps you were. Perhaps it was your dignity. The mat beneath you has shifted again, or maybe it's you who's shifted. You can't tell. Everything feels slightly wrong, creased in the middle, scratchy along one edge, suspiciously damp along another. The blanket you so carefully rearranged before slipping into your shallow drifting has migrated to someone else's knees. You tug at it gently, but it doesn't come. There are layers of limbs, weights, and passive resistance anchoring it down. You decide it's not worth the battle. The rooster chooses that moment to declare war. It doesn't crow. It erupts, throaty, raw, furious, as if each morning it is personally offended by the passage of time. You do not hate it, exactly. It is simply doing what it must. But if it were to vanish suddenly, you would not search for it. Outside, the sky is only beginning to think about becoming light. That colorless gray haze that hovers just before dawn, when everything looks like it's been sketched in ash and forgotten. The mudbrick walls begin to exhale warmth, the stored heat from yesterday rising like ghosts from the floor. You can feel it in your armpits first, then your lower back, then your shins. The night didn't cool so much as pause, just long enough to tease relief. You push yourself up slowly, as though surfacing from beneath a very heavy, very damp rug. Your joints crack like someone breaking reeds. Your neck refuses to rotate more than a few degrees in either direction. You suspect this is permanent. Your body has developed the consistency of old papyrus, brittle at the edges, suspicious in the middle, and prone to folding in ways it shouldn't. Your sibling has migrated into your space, one leg sprawled across your former pillow like a conqueror marking territory. You don't blame them. Territory is fluid. So is ownership. And so is the smell, which wafts from the corner with the scent of boiled linen, goat breath, and someone's foot. Possibly your own. You can't be sure anymore. There is a murmur of stirring bodies, stretching, yawning, sighing. None of it is energetic. No one springs from their bed. There are no songs to greet the day, only resignation, only the rustling of cloth, the creak of worn matting, the soft slap of a sandal being located by foot. Your father groans as he stands. It sounds like regret in audio form. The floor is not cold anymore. It's sticky. The warmth has activated everything unpleasant. Dust clings to your soles. A fig seed from someone's dream has embedded itself in your elbow. You pick it out slowly, trying not to imagine whose fig it was, or how long it's been there. Outside, someone is already sweeping. The soft scratch of palm fronds against dirt, rhythmic and angry. You imagine it is your neighbor's wife. She always sweeps too early, with a kind of performative violence, as if she's trying to erase the entire ground from existence. You find it comforting, in a petty way. You move toward the threshold, if it can be called that. A patch of open space where wall becomes air without warning. The breeze that meets you is neither refreshing nor stale. It is simply there, like a tax collector or an unwanted cousin. You breathe it in anyway. It tastes of dust and distance and possibility, though the latter is probably a hallucination born of dehydration. Your belly is not full, but it is not empty either. It makes a sound like an opinion trying to form. There will be food soon. Not much, not good, but food. A crust, a smear of something faintly sour, a swallow of goat's milk if your sibling hasn't already claimed it. Your expectations remain low on purpose. It's the only way to be pleasantly surprised in a world where even breakfast feels like a negotiation. You hear a pot clatter somewhere, a curse whispered beneath breath, a door that wasn't truly a door thud open. Morning is assembling itself in pieces. The sky shifts toward color now. Not blue, not yet, but the idea of blue. A promise you've learned never to trust fully. Your cousin passes you in a blur of bed hair and disapproval. They always wake grumpy, as if sleep was an argument they lost. You nod silently, a truce without words. You both understand what it means to emerge from that room alive. It's enough. Your goat, having mysteriously vanished during the night, reappears now with a triumphant bleat and something that looks suspiciously like a sock in its mouth. You do not ask whose. You do not want the answer. Instead, you take a breath that fills only halfway. The other half is blocked by the faint, persistent smell of something wet and vegetal decomposing somewhere nearby. You suspect the washing basket, or the neighbor's child. The tasks of the day loom, not dramatically, not like mountains, but like ankle-deep mud. You will do what must be done, not because you are brave or noble, but because there is no other option. You will rinse your face with water that has been warm since the last harvest. You will untangle your tunic from the pile and hope the stain on the hem is not recent. You will press your hair into some approximation of order. You will begin again. And sleep, blessed, broken, brief sleep, will become a memory. Not a good one, not a bad one, just something that happened, like a sandstorm, or taxes, or your uncle singing. The sun peeks over the horizon now, and you narrow your eyes in protest. It is too bright, too certain, too loud in its silence. You step out anyway. Your legs resist slightly, but you insist. The mat behind you lies still, abandoned but not forgotten. It holds the shape of your night like an impression in wet clay. You know it will be there again. Waiting. Familiar. Ambivalent. Your bed, but never truly yours. Just a pause between discomforts. And though your eyes sting and your bones complain and your mouth still tastes like ancient brick, you know this too. The day has begun, and sleep, once again, has become a rumor you'll chase later. When the heat has faded, when the goats have settled, when your dreams remember how to find you. But for now, you walk toward the sun you never asked for, and behind you, the night folds itself back into silence.